Okay, I'm going to kick off. Good morning, everybody. A really huge welcome to our third Health and Wellbeing conference today. My name is Johanna Bogle, and I am the Deputy Chief Financial Officer at Great Western Hospitals in Swindon. I'm also the One NHS Finance Chair of the Health and Wellbeing Network, which is a real privilege because it basically means I get to hear about all the wonderful work that's happening across the country on health and wellbeing for finance staff in the NHS. We've got a really packed agenda this morning and it's full of amazing speakers. We've based today's programme on the feedback that you and your colleagues have given us, so do please continue to let us know what you want from us over the coming months and how we can best add value to you. We have 4 main sessions today. First, Rebecca Patel will outline how the University Hospitals of Derby and Burton has developed a preventative approach to support wellbeing in the workplace. Then we'll hear from Andy Barton, who's the area lead for the West Country and South Wales for Andy's Man Club. We'll hear what that is and the initiatives that it's taking to improve men's mental health. Andy will be followed by a personal account from Stephen McNally, from NHS Sussex ICB, who will be sharing his personal reflections on his own experiences with mental health. Finally, and back for the third year in a row, Dr. William Bird will be outlining why your guts are your second brain. We're in for a real treat today, so please use this time as part of your own health and wellbeing reflection, and where you can, try to minimise the interruptions from the office so that you can really take on board the messages you're going to hear. We're scheduled to have breaks at around 10:35 and 12:15, so there is time to breathe and refuel between sessions. The last year has been really tough, hasn't it? NHSE were notified that it would be abolished, ICBs are requiring huge headcount cuts, and we've got corporate services under the spotlight for savings. It's been a year when One NHS Finance health and wellbeing offer has been needed more than ever. Since our last conference in January 2025, we've put on 13 events attended by over 100 finance staff. The feedback to these has been overwhelmingly positive. We will continue to support you and your teams wherever we can throughout 2026, and the events will be shared regularly through email bulletins and on the One NHS Finance website. If you have any ideas for events, please get in touch with your health and wellbeing rep or Natasha Plant at the HFMA, and we'll do our best to reflect those requests in our programme moving forwards. In terms of today then, just a few housekeeping. So we're going to focus on health and wellbeing within NHS Finance. We've got some great presentations from speakers both inside and outside of the NHS. If you're asking any questions, please to be inclusive to colleagues with hearing impairments. Can you have your cameras on when you're speaking or asking a question? If you've got any questions about the sessions, please you can either raise your hand or you can put your questions in the chat box. If you're not asking a question or presenting, please keep your microphone on mute throughout the event. And we are recording, so this will be made available on YouTube in a couple of weeks for sessions where the speakers have agreed that we can share them. Okay, so it's my great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Rebecca Patel. Rebecca is the Associate Director of Health, Safety and Wellbeing at the University Hospitals of Derby and Burton NHS Foundation Trust. And we're going to hear from Rebecca on how her organisation has developed a preventative approach to support wellbeing in the workplace. And Rebecca, if it's okay with you, we'll take Q&As after the session. Handing over to you.
Thank you all. Good morning, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, and I just want to echo some of the comments that have been made. I know it's really tough for you all. I know everyone's looking to you for the answers. Everyone thinks you're the answer to everything, and that can be hard in itself. So all I would say is just be kind to yourselves, and I appreciate you, and I know how hard you're working in really challenging circumstances. So thank you, and I think this is great to bring together a community as well. So yes, I'm going to give you a bit of a whistle stop tour. I must apologize if you can hear my dog. He tends to like to come along, and when I'm speaking likes to make himself known, so apologies for that if you just see my arm kind of going behind me. But yeah, I'm here to talk to you about our approach at Derby and Burton. in terms of workforce wellbeing. So if you just bear with me a moment, I am going to upload my presentation, and fingers crossed you'll be able to see this fairly soon. So let's see. Hopefully that will be coming up soon. Can everybody see that? If you just nod
Oh,
to me.
good.
Yeah, brilliant. Fantastic. Okay. So yes, I'm going to just take you through who we are as an organisation. I know some of you might be joining us from the Derbyshire patch, so you will know who we are, but I think it's important that you can understand our context. I'll give you a bit of an overview as to our approach to preventative workforce wellbeing across our system as well. More importantly, the impact that that has had and some of the key takeaways as well. So hopefully you'll have some things that you can take away today as well. And I will these slides will also be available to you as well. So you're more than welcome to reach out to me after this session. So firstly, hopefully, I am really hoping that this poll is going to work, but it may not through this presentation. Don't think that's enacting. Is anything coming up for individuals? No. Okay, I'll go back to what I'm going to do is pop something in the chat, and it'll be really helpful if I just send a link into the chat. And I'd just be interested to hear about what workforce wellbeing means to you. So hopefully there'll be a forms in the chat, and it'd be great to see if you could just click on that link. If you could just choose what you think some of those workforce what it means to you. Hopefully, let's view some of the responses. Has anybody been able to log in? Okay. So what does workforce wellbeing mean to you? Well, when we talk about workforce wellbeing, does it mean that we're tackling sickness absence? Are we tackling presenteeism? Is it an add-on to an existing role? Is it something that cannot be effectively measured? Or is it a nice to do in the current climate? So thank you for those of you who have responded. The vast majority, and I have got it on my screen here, so let me share that rather than you just seeing a different screen. Technology. It's great when it works, isn't it? So just bear with me, and we can see in live time where we see those results. So you can see here, hopefully, as it keeps changing, we have the majority of individual is some people think that it's something that cannot be effectively measured. So that seems to be the majority, followed by it's a nice to do in the current climate. And you know that will be open, so I will ensure that that's shared as well. But hopefully, as we go through this session, you will be able to see that it is something that can be measured, and we have started to measure. And hopefully, you'll be able to see that there's just little things that we can be doing in order to support workforce wellbeing. So I'm going to stop sharing that screen, and then we'll go back to the presentation. So who we are as an organisation. So as I've said, we are Team UHDB, so we're University Hospitals of Derby and Burton. We're a Midlands-based organisation. We are one of the largest hospital providers in the NHS. So we actually have 5 hospitals across both Staffordshire and Derbyshire. Our workforce headcount is around 14,500. So if you think of that as a small town, with all of the issues that a small town may have as well, we do have some of the best retention rates actually in the NHS, which is something we're quite proud of. We do have a foot, if you like, in 2 ICB footprints, so Stoke and Staffordshire and Derby and Derbyshire. And our budget is around 1.3 billion as well. So the sites we have, you can see on the map there, they're quite closely located together. So we've got our main hospital site, which also we have a helipad as well, but we're not a major trauma centre, just to be clear. So Royal Derby which is our Derbyshire, which also includes Derbyshire Children's Hospital. We've got a site at Queen's Hospital in Burton, Samuel Johnson, Lichfield, Sir Robert Peel in Tamworth, and then our original site, which is on London Road in Derby, and that's what we call our Florence Nightingale site, all of which have obviously outpatients, etc. And we've got 2 areas, Queen's Hospital Burton and Royal Derby, which is our acute front door as well. So we deliver around 9,000 babies each year. We have around 275,000 attends at A&E. But I would anticipate that that's going to be more this year, as we've heard in the news. And we do have, on average, around 1,800 beds, which again escalate during winter pressures as well. But when we're thinking about workforce wellbeing, it's really, really important that we look at that national context. So one of the things that I like to do on a regular basis is just do a bit of a search on the articles, the comment pieces, thought pieces that are coming out around workforce wellbeing. And over the last month, really, I've done a bit of a trawl. I think we can all appreciate, and we probably all have a local news story that talks about the NHS, talks about staff, talks about long waits, etc. We might have commented on them, we might have involved, we might have educated individuals, but there is always something about our local hospitals and where we work within the media. And what I found was that it's actually overwhelmingly negative when we think about workforce wellbeing. There's a focus on absence, there's a focus on burnout, staff are burnt out, they're tired. There's the focus on lack of care and compassion. There's a focus on data, how we're pitting each other against one another, against metrics, and you'll know within the finance community, what are others doing down the road? How are they managing to have this SIP or not? So we know there's this element of when we're talking about workforce wellbeing, it does seem to be overwhelmingly negative. There's very little, if any, actually, on prevention or what we can be doing, because we are 5 years post-pandemic, and the recognition of that, and actually 5 to 7 years after a major event is when we start to see our staff and our workforce suffering. That's when you start to get the post-traumatic stress indicators, which we can probably see. Add to that really challenging periods, and working or having to work in a different way. We can see how some of our staff may be burnt out. There's also very little talk about the impact of shift working, how that impacts on diet and exercise. And there's also very little on the impact of the increased patient activity, and more importantly, the increase in patient acuity as well. So we know we've got individuals with very complex long-term health conditions. They may be multiple long-term health conditions. And so when people turn up into our sites, whether that be from a primary care perspective or secondary care or specialist care, they're very, very poorly in the way that we probably haven't seen previously. And it's really important that we take the lead, and it's our role to shine a light on these issues as well. So what we have to think about as a community and as organisations is the load that people may be carrying before they even walk through our doors. I know myself, depending on the journey I've had to work, really does impact my mood, to be fair. And I think we can all resonate with that, whether we're driving into work or whether we're working from home or doing the school run or whatever we're doing. We have that load unintentionally on our shoulders as we're walking through the organisation. So it's really important that we recognise that. There may be individuals who have caring responsibilities. They may be a care leaver themselves. Their health may not be great that day. There may be other personal circumstances that are happening which are affecting them on that day. They may have pressures at home, and work is actually an escapism for them. And it could just be as simple as who they are, their identity, their sense of belonging, not just at home within their community, but also within the organisational community. So it's important that we recognise that actually people have a lot going on before they even set foot through the door to start their shift or to log onto their computer or to log onto a meeting. So it's important we recognise that and we respond to that as well. So we did recognise that as an organisation. So one of the things we wanted to do is we took all of that into consideration. We took into into consideration what the load people might be carrying, and our role as an organisation in supporting our small town, if you like, of our staff, and how that contributes to the wider public health agenda as well. We did want to do something different in our patch, and we wanted to build on Britain's Healthiest Workplace Survey, which was undertaken in 2022. And we work as part of what we call Joined Up Care Derbyshire, which includes our primary care colleagues. It includes acute hospitals, community hospitals, specialist hospitals, and really importantly, from a social care element as well, our local authority partners. So what we did is we developed a bit of a health needs analysis for the system, which was aligned to the principles of the National Health and Wellbeing Framework. And I don't know if you've all seen that, but again, I can send a link into that and pop that in the chat. We know as organisations and as local areas, we do have a joint strategic needs assessment, which looks at the needs of the population, but we wanted to go a little bit further for our health and social care colleagues. And we wanted to delve a bit deeper. What is important to them because of the nature of the work that they do and the emotional load and burden that they may encounter on a daily basis, irrespective of where they work. It's important that they have that opportunity to think about what their health needs are for our patch. So it undertook a bit of a health needs analysis, and it was a cross section of individuals. It was around 2,500 staff across the system that took part, a range of backgrounds, lived experience, a range of staff groups, a range of people who were working daily with patients or service users, and those who might have been in transformational or transactional functions as well. And we know that public health methodology will give us an overview as to that behaviour change is really important when we're looking at public health outcomes. And that is something that we did find in our health needs analysis. And we know that public health methodology is really important to create that long-lasting impact and create healthy habits. So we actually asked, through our health needs analysis, we asked our system workforce colleagues about their relationship with health and wellbeing activities. So we did ask them about how active they felt they were. And 24% of respondents said that it's absolutely not on their radar and they're not thinking about it either. So that was a focus that we wanted to ensure that we wanted to tackle those individuals in terms of their inactivity. Now, just be clear, workforce wellbeing isn't just about physical activity, but we know that increasing activity can have a real positive impact on other elements. And it isn't about running a marathon or starting a couch to 5K or starting with completely unrealistic expectations. It's the small changes that we can do in order to increase physical activity in our daily lives. So as I say, we asked our colleagues, so 24% not on their radar, 74% we wanted who were currently doing some level of physical activity, which we know is having a positive impact on their wider well-being. We wanted to help them to maintain and encourage them to remain active and look after their well-being as well. So delving a little bit deeper into the data, we knew that actually, if we looked at that 2022 overall national survey that was undertaken around health and activity and well-being, etc., our staff, and this will be applicable in other areas as well, so our health and social care staff, they had a higher than average in terms of UK measures of personal well-being. So what I mean by that, higher than average for low rating. So not positive, but actually quite negative. So there was a higher than average low rating for how satisfied they were with their lives, how much they felt worthwhile, their low rating for happiness, and feeling anxious as well. So we knew that there was something we needed to tackle there, because that's a systemic issue that we need to ensure that we put things in place where we can look after holistically our workforce. We also knew that the data told us that our staff are not as hydrated as they could be. And I think we can all be guilty of that at some stage in our lives during the working day. How many of us have gone, oh, I've not had anything to drink, I'm getting a bit of a headache? I might need something to drink, and then forget about it because we're delving into the next thing. So it's really important that we have those mechanisms in place where we can keep hydrated. 1 in 4 said they were suffering from ongoing pain. So when I was talking about workload, load, if you like, and load before you get to work, if you're suffering in pain and you've got chronic pain and you don't necessarily have the right equipment, or you're sitting incorrectly, or you're carrying that, that is going to have a detrimental impact on you. And we've probably all been in pain some day or other. Most days we might have a headache, etc. We know how that affects us. And we know if we don't do something about that, that's going to have a detrimental long-term impact. So all of the data, it gave us an overview of where we needed to kind of put our efforts and where we needed to focus our efforts as a system as well. So what did we do with that? So we knew what all the data was telling us. It probably wasn't different from what we were expecting, but there were some real key things in there around sort of access and how people are active or not. And I just wanted to show you this as well, because I think it's important that what it also showed was that there was a strong correlation between colleagues' adherence to activity and their personal well-being scores. So if individuals were more active, their personal well-being scores around life satisfaction, feeling worthwhile, their anxiety levels had reduced, etc. So we knew that tackling that inactivity was going to help us to some extent. So our response, as you can see there, is that we developed a range of resources that we'd already had. We enhanced some resources, and we recognised the areas we needed to focus on. So it was aimed at targeting an activity. We wanted to ensure that we had things that was on demand, that was accessible, because we recognised that not everybody can access things in-house during the working day. We all work in different patterns. Our staff group, so if I'm talking about, from a local authority, somebody who might be working in facilities management or working on the bins, their access to computers nigh on non-existent, but there will be push notifications through an app, for example, for our local authority colleagues where they get them most information, or there might be a local Facebook group that they're involved in. So it's ensuring that our resources that we were developing were accessible on a range of formats, and this is not rocket science, but sometimes we forget some of the simple things as well. So we wanted things that on demand. We wanted to ensure that we signposted effectively to existing resources. So across Derby and Derbyshire, UHDB actually provide the occupational health service. So our occupational health team are responsible for about 25,000 staff from a range of disciplines, range of staff groups, etc. But what we found was actually people didn't necessarily know how occupational health could help, and they didn't necessarily understand what occupational health was there for. So again, we took the opportunity to do a bit of an education piece around occupational health, because that is an element to help with the prevention side of things, and also to help to respond to any traumatic incident as well. Our resources were co-designed with the people that we wanted to work with, and they were co-designed with our stakeholders, so that's across the system, all the organisations working together. Because what will work in GP practice won't necessarily work in a local authority, and will be completely different to an acute setting as well. So we wanted to ensure that we had those resources that were co-designed. And we also developed a range of Wellbeing Champions peer support network, which work really, really well. Again, not rocket science, but sometimes it's important to remember we need to have the basics in place. So those Wellbeing Champions are based out in areas. They are responsible for disseminating information, updating, telling us when it doesn't quite work as well, if something hasn't quite landed, because that's important. And as I said before, it's sometimes just simple messaging. So we had clocked at our Royal Derby site. It's quite a large site. It takes around 25 minutes to walk round, 30 minutes to walk round. If you're parked at the very end of the car park, and if you work on level 5, which is the top level of the hospital, that's actually at 1 mile, which we've clocked it as. So again, without realizing, you could be doing 2 miles. And then if you walk back to your car for a break, you're doing 4 miles before you know it. So that's 4 miles on your day that you didn't think you were necessarily doing. So it's just around simple messaging. And that worked for other sites as well, like taking the stairs and all of that sort of thing, and how many calories you can burn. So again, not rocket science, not new, not unique, but just a collection of how we can have those simple messages. So what you can also see here is a range of our resources when we're talking about our resources. The first thing you'll notice, they're very colourful, and we're very lucky that we've got some good branding, because everybody knows if you see something like that across our sites, it's relating to workforce wellbeing, and we've got a brand with that. What we also recognised was that there is so much technology to be able to help with activity and mindfulness resources, etc. But sometimes the cost can be prohibitive. If we look at, a Garmin watch or an Apple watch in order to track our health, they're at least a couple of £100s. That can be really prohibitive for some of our staff, and it's just a cost they cannot bear. But they want to do something about tracking their activity. So we partnered up with a sports organisation called MyZone, which do a range of wearable technology. Other sort of companies are available, but we've done quite a bit of work with them, particularly in the health coaching space as well, and sports science. So we partnered up with them, and we managed to secure some funding through our charitable funds in order to reduce the cost significantly for staff. So staff can actually buy that wearable tech for £20. So again, £20 is probably more palatable, but it can change people's lives to track what they are doing and their physical activity or inactivity as well. So that was just one idea that we had. We've also got a wellbeing timetable which is available across the system, and it's refreshed on a quarterly basis depending on what the system is telling us, the data that we have. So that might be staff surveys, that might be where sickness absence is. And it's made up of a couple of things. So it's made up of webinars, workshops and training available free of charge. And it's also made up of a range of activities that are available. So just to give you an example, snapshot. So we have got low impact classes available, half an hour to 45 minutes. That includes things like hip health, menopause, yoga, shoulder workshops, shoulder stretches. And I tell you something, you don't realise how tense you are until you do one of these stretch classes. You think, my goodness, I feel like I've gone to the gym for about an hour. And all delivered by our in-house specialists. So whether that be physio team, MSK team, hip health, we work very closely with our osteosurgeons who'll do how you can do stretches and sit properly and that sort of thing. So we are very blessed. We've got a range of individuals who are with us to understand how important this is. We've also got just general wellbeing support, holistic therapies that you would expect to see as well, on-demand videos. So we have an on-demand channel which has got a range of small impact classes as well that you can just look at for your leisure. And really importantly, and we've actually seen a triple increase in participation in this, we around back care. So how we can look after our backs, the things that we need to be doing and need to be mindful of. And that's with some of our specialist physiotherapists and desk stretchers. It also uniquely, we have got health improvement advisors across the system. So very much working on a bit of a health coaching element, looking at social prescribing, and supporting our organisations to do any wraparound support, any bespoke support in their areas, very much focusing on improving the health and well-being of our workforce. In addition to that, we do have a peer psychological support service. So we use a methodology of TRIM and STRAW. So TRIM is trauma informed management, which I know a lot in acute settings will use. I know that the ambulance service in particular uses methodology, and that's very much in the moment what happens, a bit of hot debriefing, cold debriefing, etc. And we also have STRAW, so how we can sustain resilience at work as well. So if something happens or you are bringing that load before you get to work and it's just a bit tricky on that day, we've got a range of practitioners who can help and support, and a walk-in centre as well at our hospital sites. So it isn't necessarily rocket science, but what it does do, it does respond to the needs of our workforce, and it is refreshed on that quarterly basis. And more importantly, it's free, and at a time to suit individuals. So the impact that we've had is we all create initiatives, don't we, to respond to health and well-being. But the difference, I suppose, with our offer is that because we had that additional analysis from the health needs work that we did, we knew how to target and where our issues were. And we also understand our responsibilities across the system as well. And the fact that we've got system commitment, I think, is a huge bonus, particularly in this current challenging environment. It's more important than ever to try and work as collaboratively as we can and look after one another and take care of one another as well, and recognise that it's okay not to be okay. And I think that's important. And the wellbeing timetable offer is the same, irrespective of your organisation. And we've also included some of our voluntary and community sector colleagues as well, so they can access that, because we know some of their impact that they have and some of the things that they hear, and they're working in the areas where we have current gaps in terms of community development and health outcomes. So it's important that they are included. And that commitment across the system enables us to have, a really big impact on public health outcomes. And the timetable activity does actually correlate with sickness absence. So when we have seen an increase in participation, particularly with some of our MSK related, we have seen that impact on absence. So there is a direct correlation there. But it's important that we also ensure that we create a culture of well-being, because there's a really fine line between when we're talking about tackling sickness absence and when we're talking about creating a culture of well-being, because we always want to be open and honest about how people are feeling. If we're going to be open and honest about how people are feeling, we need to be mindful of the fact that sickness absence is going to go up, because we're giving people permission to actually take a moment to rest, recharge, and get better and get well, and have the tools and skills that they need to be able to thrive at work. And it's important that as managers, so some of you will be managers on the call, if not most, it's important, particularly now, that you feel supported yourselves, and that also you're upskilled to support your team. So we actually have some peer support manager drop-in sessions as well. And we have also recognised, with a lot that's happening with our resident doctors, particularly with industrial action, some of the work that's come out from physician associates and how people are feeling, we have got peer support groups for those individuals as well, which is completely led by themselves. We just have a space on the timetable. All we do is coordinate that space and send the link out. And on last count, I think we had about 40 individuals on that resident doctors drop in. So it's just a simple idea, but real creating a culture of well-being. Do we get it right all the time? Absolutely not. But at least we're open enough to learn from the experiences of our workforce. And just to give you an idea of how many interventions as a result of that across the system. So 22,909 support interventions we've had via this wellbeing timetable that we have, which has contributed to a reduction in some areas of long-term sickness absence. We also use that wellbeing timetable as a mechanism to support individuals to transition back into the workplace. And we have a specific group in terms of if you're transitioning back in from a long-term sickness absence, as a peer support network, because we know it's tricky and we know it's hard if you've been off work for a period of time, whether that's to do with maternity, parental, special leave, bereavement leave, or sickness as well. So it's how we can support individuals back into the workplace. And one of the other things is that we know that a lot of our workforce have got really significant long-term health conditions as well. And sometimes you can feel like you're the only person who has that condition. So we have more recently, in the last financial year, actually had a specialist, a long-term sort of health condition group that's been going quite well, actually. And individuals have found that peer support and they've been able to support one another. So it's, again, creating that culture of belonging and well-being. But the important thing is that talks about workforce well-being. So it's really important, though, that we think about our data and how we triangulate that as well. So one of the things that I just wanted to ask you actually, and just pop it in the chat because I don't think the poll is going to work, is when we're looking at, or when you are involved in conversations around workforce wellbeing, do you know if you or your organisation, do you look at health and safety incidents as part of that conversation? So if you just pop in the chat a yes or a no, do you look at, or do you know if we look at health and safety incidents? So some no's, some yeses, bit of a mix. Great. So I think there's a bit of a mix. I'm not sure. That's absolutely fine. That is absolutely fine. So I think it's really important. We have, as you well know, being finance colleagues, a whole host of data and information. Some of it is within our control and influence, and some of that is not within our control and influence. But it's really important when we're looking at proactive wellbeing interventions, it's important to look at the whole picture. So it's not just about sickness absence. That only tells us one side of the coin, doesn't it? We are data rich as organisations, as NHS organisations, but our analysis can be quite poor. So when we're looking at data triangulation, we need to look at things like RIDDORs, so health and safety. Now, I would say that because health and safety is within my portfolio and it is what I'm responsible for. But RIDDORs and incidents give you an indication as to the environment that people are working within. And RIDDORs are the incidents that we have to report, one of which is if somebody has received an injury and is off work for more than 7 days. So that's going to contribute to our sickness absence. That's also going to contribute to their well-being because they've been injured at work. Now, the question is that injury as a result of the environment that we've put in place, or is that injury as a result of them being overworked? They might have taken a corner too quickly, or they might be not skilled as well. Either way, irrespective of that, it's important that we understand that incident. And it's important how we can then use that to identify sort of hotspot areas, if you like, within the organisation. If you then take that information, look at sickness absence, if you're looking at how we're using occupational health, we know that there are more moving and handling issues within the organisation. That's moving patients, that might be portering, that might be moving equipment. So that's going to have a detrimental impact on our overall MSK health within the organisation. And if we remember a few slides back, we know if you have MSK issue, you might be in pain, that pain might be exacerbated. What's that going to affect? That's going to affect your general well-being. That's going to affect your ability to thrive in the workplace potentially. That's also going to affect your mental health. So you can see how a simple incident might then catalyst into all sorts of other things as well. So it's really, really important that we look at that information. It's also important that similar to how we and I'm just talking about hospital setting now, but how we plan for discharge on admission, we should be taking that approach for some of our long-term sickness. So planning for transition. So planning for transition, um, you know, back into the workplace or having an honest conversation about what that means for that individual as well. So we should be planning for return within long-term sickness. And the other element is how we look at our new starters as well. So we've got all of this data. We know where they're coming into the organisation. We know the postcodes that they're coming from. Why are we not looking at public health outcomes for that information? And why are we not looking at how we can proactively welcome individuals to the organisation and in 6 months' time give them some bespoke health and wellbeing information and resources? We also know that violence and aggression is an increasing issue, concern, not just from our patients and visitors to our staff, but also staff on staff. The staff survey results I anticipate will be negative in terms of this question. But that's because people feel, and the question is whether people feel right to be able to, report their concerns or what's happened to them or not. We want to create a positive reporting culture, and the only way that you'll see that is if you increase those incidents as well, or reporting of those incidents, and more importantly, how we respond to those. So our focus very much has been on data triangulation, looking at the incidents, looking at how we maximise our resources and how we look at maximising that occupational health clinical contact to our specialists in their field and can support. Looking at long-term sickness plans and management, and I've noticed there are a couple of comments around long-term sickness. There's ways and means you can ask the question around long-term sickness, and it isn't necessarily around asking, how long do you think you'll be off for? It's more around, how can I support you right now? And how can I support your transition back? That's a completely different conversation. And it comes down to how we upskill our managers in having that conversation, because we know managers are under pressure. And you can still be compassionate and inclusive and make difficult decisions. And it's really important that as managers, as leaders, that our employees feel able to be honest about how they're feeling as well. So never underestimate the power of an interaction is one of my key takeaways. And my team get bored to tears with me keep saying that. But words matter, and we have to understand the impact of those. So hopefully that helps with some of those questions that have come through. So that's been our focus. So as I said at the beginning, key takeaways. I don't profess to be Uber Eats. Other takeaway elements are available. Organisations are available, but I'm quite a visual person, and it's important that I just compartmentalise, if you like, some of our key learnings and takeaways that we've had. We're not as good as Uber Eats, and I'm sorry if you don't like a burger, but I'm sure there are other options that are available. It's really important that you remember your base. What's your baseline? What do we actually already know about our workforce? We could probably rattle off our sickness absence, but does that actually tell you what's going on? Does that give you an indication of the culture in those teams where we've got high sickness? Is there a high range of casework in that area? Is it some of the cases that they're actually dealing with, whether it be from a clinical or non-clinical perspective? Is there an issue around workload? Have we lost individuals and not replaced them, but the workload is still the same? There's a whole sort of thing that we need to be looking at. So do remember your base and what we already know about our workforce. It's really important that we look beyond our own lens and our own expertise. I'm very blessed in that I've worked in all sectors, so I'm able to bring some of that experience from, local authority, voluntary and community sector, and private as well as the NHS. But it's important that anything we do is experience-based design and demonstrating how we've got that lived experience as well, and look beyond the NHS, look beyond our own scope of influence. And actually, that's where you get the greatest learning, and just try it. And if it doesn't work, that's okay. We've learnt from that as well. Proactive communications in a variety of ways. So that can be simple messaging, it can be something on a board, it can be a push notification through an app, but it's important that it's proactive, that it's timely. We do not get communication right. Sometimes we try to be too complicated, and it's really important that we strip that back and be clear and concise. Because we know, particularly now, communication is more important than ever, and how people are using data to communicate as well. We have to recognise we've got different people in our workforce in terms of how they learn, how they take in information, how they wish to be interacted with. So it's important that our communication methods reflect that and are accessible as well. And as I've said, never underestimate the power of an interaction as well. It's really important that we recognise the language that we use, the tone that we use, and even we've had debates on what to call some of our sessions as well, because that can be a barrier in itself. If you yourself or an individual is really struggling with something, but you might not want to say, oh, it's a mental health issue, because that in itself is quite loaded language. But if you were to say, do you know what, I just need to chat through just a problem, that's different. So it's really important that we recognise the power that we have as individuals and that words matter as well. And when we're looking at all of our data in how we're approaching workforce wellbeing, it's how we triangulate that data and how we understand the impact that we're having in a positive culture that we're having and how that contributes to what we're trying to achieve. So it's not rocket science, but our approach has worked because we've worked across the system, we've worked across our organisational boundaries, and more importantly, we've actually worked to the needs of our workforce, and recognizing that our workforce are our greatest asset. So it's important that we put proactive things in and reactive things in to support them now more than ever, because of the challenging times that we find ourselves in. But also comes with that a level of responsibility for managers. So it's important we look after managers too, and that we upskill them and that they have a network as well. So I hope that's been helpful, and apologies that the tech wasn't working for me, but I really appreciate your interaction. So those are my details. Please feel free to reach out to me. More than happy to have a conversation. More than happy to answer any questions as well. And like I say, we've been very blessed because of the relationships that we've built up, and I think it's really important that we recognise the things that we can control and influence, and what we can control or influence are the words that we use and how we interact with one another as well. Okay, so happy to take any questions.
I saw two questions come up and then the names have disappeared. I think the first one was Sarah. Sarah, do you still have a question?
No, I pressed the wrong button, sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
Okay.
And then Antonia or Antonio, I didn't quite catch it.
Yeah, I pressed the wrong button too.
Oh, all right. I'll kick off with a question.
Yes.
Wow, I thought that was really good. Thank you so much, Rebecca. And I think, one of the first things that you said was that your retention rates are some of the highest in the NHS. So that clearly reflects the work that's going on to make your staff feel, as you said, like they belong, and that they're really important to the organisation. So I think that's brilliant. I picked up a couple of questions that were coming through the chat as you were going. One was, how do you set up the wellbeing timetable?
So how we set it up is we have a group that is all the key stakeholders across the patch. What we look at is some of the data around sickness, absence, etc. Some of the feedback that we've had that we know about. We literally just have an A3 sheet of paper. It's not rocket science, and we go, right, we know that we need to have a focus on this area. We know that MSK is an issue, so let's work with our physio teams, see if we can run a session for half an hour. This is the issue, see what their solutions are. So it is around deferring to your experts. We do have, and we are very blessed, and probably other organisations don't have this, so I'm happy to share the resources that we have. We do have an in-house graphic designer who works with us for like a day and a half a week, who's able to pull all of those resources into something attractive and colourful. So it is around knowing what your data is telling you and then looking at who can help you to deliver that. And for some of our physios, they absolutely love it because they're obviously it's part of their practice. It's also part of their upskilling and their CPD that they can say at the end of their appraisal that they've trained and undertaken these sessions, change lives, to be fair. So it's getting the right people around the table for you, and that's what we do. And then we reflect on a quarterly basis. And the wellbeing timetable has two sides to it. So we've got the what's on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then on the back we've got the webinars, etc. that happen. But I'm happy if that individual wanted to have a further conversation, I can show you the mechanics of it, not a problem.
Thank you so much. Okay, we've got a few questions coming through then. So Karen, do you want to go first?
Yeah, hi Rebecca, thanks. An awful lot of content in there, and I'm just trying to work out in my head which will relate to us as a CSU and which won't. But I think the bit I've picked up on mainly is around when you said about occupational health.
Yes.
So I have a feeling that we buy in our occupational health.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of aware that we are very reactive in our use of occupational health rather than proactive. I know I've had discussions with some of my managers around, just because somebody's off sick, you can refer them to occupational health while they're off sick and all of that.
Yeah.
So I know you talked a little bit about comms around occupational health. What in particular did you focus on, and what difference do you think it made? In my head, I think we need to do it, but I'm not quite sure how.
So we have a monthly occupational health session on the timetable that says that goes through with managers how to make a good management referral and what you should expect out of that. In addition, we're currently working on a what to expect from your occupational health appointment, both from an employee and from a manager, so you can be prepared as possible. And what we also know, and we're not daft as well, we do know that occupational health is used sometimes inappropriately for the benefit of the employee, because they think that occupational health is going to give them everything that they ask for as well. So the communication has very much been around upskilling managers and being clear what occupational health can and cannot do. We're quite lucky because we are an NHS occupational health service, so we are lucky that we can understand the minutiae of detail around management of occupational health, alongside casework, alongside management of sickness absence and culture and that sort of thing. So the communication has very much been around what we can, what we can't do, working very closely with HR colleagues as well, particularly around case conferencing and trying to get the right occupational health intervention at the earliest stage possible. Because what we tend to find with some of complex cases and issues is that it's possibly too far down the track and then we're having to backtrack, and that's not helpful for the individual, and it's not helpful for our HR colleagues or managers as well.
Okay, great, thanks.
No problems.
Thank you. Katie, do you want to go next?
Hi Rebecca, thank you. Oh, am I on? That was great, thanks. My question, I've got like a bit of a double question, and I apologise if you've already said it, is whether your wellbeing timetable is during working hours, and if it is, how you would advise we go about communicating, implementing something like that into our workforce, our service. I work for a national charity, Mental Health Matters.
Yeah.
And I feel as though one barrier among our staff is, as you've discussed, burnout being quite high, kind of asking them to attend some of these wellbeing initiatives feels like something else to do.
Yeah.
When they're already feeling like really exhausted, really tired. So I think it could be really helpful if these initiatives ran during working hours. And yeah, I wondered like how we could go about trying to communicate that with the people in power who could implement that.
So we do have a range. So our, if you like, on our daily timetable, in actual fact, if you just bear with me, I'm gonna share you what we've got on our internal pages. But we have two elements. So we have what's called our on-demand videos. So those are out of hours, if you like, which people can access, and there are low impact classes, or there might be just like hypnotherapy, like hypnosis or whatever for 20 minutes or so. And then we do have a range in the working day and just before the shift handovers as well. So if you just bear with me, I'm just going to share our what it actually looks like, because I think it's important that you can see the times that it starts, etc. Right. So this is our virtual timetable for January to March. So you can see that we've got exercises that start at 7:30 in the morning. And most of the days, and you can see that if things run until about, we've got some evening things as well. So stretch, de-stress and sound bath. That's been really, really successful. We've had to run that several times, the sound bath Apparently it's a new treatment that helps individuals. And we've also got things like the Dad Space, which runs in the evening at our local Pride Park. But you can see everything else is sort of within the time. So that's what we have from a wellbeing perspective. And then we've got webinars and training, which again are all within the work time as well. And individuals are encouraged to, but the areas that have got an asterisk on are the areas that you can book on. If you can't make it, you'll still have access to the on-demand video as well. But I take your point around that protected time, and again it really is dependent upon the manager that you have and the commitment that you have as well. And it's, I suppose, what we have done, we recognise that there is a difference between some of our clinical colleagues. So what we have been doing is during their team huddles, etc., they might have had one of the on-demand videos on as part of their team development. And in terms of communication, I absolutely understand how important it is to ensure that people are given that permission, if you like, to access. So I don't have the answers. I can only say what works for us at UHDB. That is the approach that we have taken to ensure that there is a range from times, there is a range of on demand, and there is an expectation within some of our huddles and team meetings. That's what's happened, and that's been set from the chief exec.
Bill, thank you. That's really helpful. It does answer
No
it.
problem.
Thank you.
And that timetable is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it looks incredible.
We're very lucky, and it's all down to the fantastic work of the team and the system, and that collective need to do something together.
Yeah, brilliant. Next question from Helen then, please.
Hi, yes, thanks, Rebecca. That was really interesting, and the timetable was really impressive. So I was just wondering, have you got any plans, or do you open it up to the wider public, or is that just for staff, that timetable?
It's just for staff at this moment in time, because that some of those are protected spaces, and what we have found is in a previous organisation, when I have had dual things, it's difficult for the staff because they may be seeing the individuals that they'd see in their professional life. But that's not to say that actually we have to recognise we do have a responsibility as an NHS organisation in particular to contribute to positive health outcomes. So that is something that we potentially could explore. And you can probably tell I'm quite passionate about getting the most out of individuals, and that prevention element, it's all over the 10-year plan for the NHS. So it's important that we play our part in that. Even, if we can get to a predictive health modelling perspective, and if we have got healthy and well staff that feel looked after or thriving, that ultimately impacts patient care as well and civility in the workplace. So at this moment in time, it's probably a lofty ambition, but that's not to say that we won't be working towards that from a patient's perspective as well.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thank you.
Okay, I picked up one other question from the chat, if that's okay.
Yeah,
it was around your peer groups.
Yes.
Are they face to face or are they online?
They're a mix.
Okay.
Sometimes they're face to face because we're across. So I'm just talking about UHDB now, but because we're across 5 sites, and I know that our colleagues, across in the community trusts, and they're across the numerous sites, as is the mental health trust as well. So we do have a mix. Sometimes they are face to face, and sometimes they're hybrid. So we might have people in the room and then virtual, and people who are virtual as well. So it's a mixed, and the reason it's mixed because the peer groups are determined by what works for them. It isn't us as an organisation saying, oh, you need to work that. We've created that safe space. We have got champions who might start things up, and then it runs itself as well. And one of the elements we recognise is a gap, and we want to try and improve and reduce that gap, is our medical body. consultant body, and from a local authority, voluntary and community sector, it would be the senior leaders. We recognise that that's a bit of a gap at this moment in time, so we want to try and address that, and that's difficult in terms of engagement and communication, but we have got some key leaders who can help us with that and unlock some of those unintended barriers that might be in place for those cohort of staff.
Fabulous. Okay, if there are no other questions, I just want to say thank you so much for opening our conference. It has been a brilliant start. I think you've got people who want to work at your trust, so your retention is going to be even better. And good luck with the staff survey results, which I'm sure will reflect all of the great work that's going on. Okay.
Yes. So, and again, if anybody wants to reach out, more than happy for you to, and I really appreciate the opportunity to come and shout about the work of my team. I'm incredibly proud of them. So
thank you. Okay, we've now got a break until 11:15, so we are now going to start our second session of this morning's conference. Hopefully you all had a chance for a quick break and a cup of tea. I am really delighted to welcome Andy Barton, who is the area lead for the West Country and South Wales for Andy's Man Club. We're going to hear what it's about and how it helps with men's mental health. Andy, are you okay to take over, and we'll do questions and answers at the end?
Yeah, no problem at all. Let me
Thank
just
you so much.
let me just see if I can share my screen properly. Oh, that's the wrong one. Bear with me. Sorry.
It's all right.
Can everybody see that okay?
Yes, perfect.
Yep. Perfect. Right, just before I go into it, I do talk about suicide. My name is Andy, but I go by the name in the charity of Barts. I am the area lead, as I previously said, for the West Country and South Wales, but I'll come into that a bit more later on. Trigger warning, I do talk about suicide. I don't go into great detail. I just mention it several times throughout this, and it is talked about. So it's just a trigger warning for anybody on here that I do talk about suicide. So please, if anything does get a bit too much for you, just hold your hand up. I can stop what I'm doing, and we can sort of maybe mute the call just for that bit. But as I say, it's just a trigger warning for people that I do talk about suicide. As I say, but not into great detail. So that's just a trigger warning for people that may find the subject sensitive. I am here today to talk about Andy's Man Club, what we do, why we do, and how we came about. Mental health for me can be a bad day. It could be a bad week. It could be a trauma that happened 20 years ago. Negative mental health can be anything, or mental health struggles can be anything. Finances, any of those things. Near enough everybody in everyday life has some type of mental health struggle. But so did this guy, Andy Roberts. Sadly, at the age of 23, life got too much for him, and he took his own life up in Halifax on April 2016. His family believed that if he talked, he'd still be here today. So they also wanted to do something that other families didn't have to go through what they went through. But the main factor of the initial thing was the fact that if they thought that Andy had talked, he'd still be here today. There's a couple of videos throughout this. The first video is Elaine, who is Andy's mum. She is the co-founder, and a bit later on you'll find out a bit more about Luke Ambler, who's Andy's brother-in-law, which Elaine and Luke got together, and they came up with Andy's Man Club. But I'll come on to that a bit more. Here's Elaine just talking about Andy.
We were a cheeky chappy, typical lad, tough as nails, but I think probably had a soft centre. Andrew died early hours of the Tuesday, 5th of April. And the weekend prior to that, he'd had an enormous falling out with his partner. And I just think he got himself into a really dark place that he couldn't get out of. And that's the sad thing. We just think if he talked to any body, to have snapped him out of it, told him what he was thinking were rubbish, he would still have been here today.
So that's Elaine just explaining, pretty much reiterating what I said, that they believed that if he talked, he'd still be here today. Alongside other men within the UK, suicide's the biggest killer of men under the age of 54. It's massive stat. 2024 stats we haven't received 2025 yet, but 74% of suicides in the UK were male in 2024. So 4,900 men take their own lives every year. The stats are just too much. There's just too many people. We believe by talking, we could lower these figures. The average is 12 men every day, 1 man every 2 hours. I put that down a bit more personal to myself. That I am into lots of sports. I love all types of sports, but mainly football. And with the half-time, second half, injury time, and the half-time interval, that's 1 man every football match. Again, it's just too many people. It just feel like they can't. The best way, or the best way for them to do it is to take their own life. On the back of that, each suicide affects around 135 people. So over 500,000 people every year are affected by suicide. 135 people as soon as somebody takes their own life. It's a massive number of people to be affected. And this is why we've come about to help reduce those numbers and take that number down. So following Andy's suicide, Luke wanted to set up the Andy Roberts Coffee Club. Went to Elaine with what he was a bit of an idea. The two of them come up to it with a great concept, but Elaine wasn't. She thought the name Andy Roberts Coffee Club was too personal to her, Andy. It wouldn't reach out to a wider audience. So they came up with the acronym Andy's Man Club. And in June 2016, a Facebook post went out. And due to the response the following week, in July 2016, the first Andy's Man Club was held up in Halifax. 9 men walked through the door that very first evening, and Andy's Man Club was born. So this year we're going to be 10 years old. So just remember the one club with 9 men walking through the door. 2 weeks after the first event, that's Luke in that picture there. 2 weeks after the first session, Luke came up with the It's Okay to Talk campaign. Recognised as one of the biggest mental health campaigns on the planet. I liked a bit of humour into this one. In that picture, he's not actually doing it, but Luke came up with the idea with It's Okay to Talk by the hand. He just wanted to get it out there to more people, and he came up with this campaign actually while he was sat on the toilet. So one of the biggest mental health campaign on the planet was actually the idea was actually come up by someone was sat on the toilet. We had lots of people taking part, Hollywood stars and personal sports people. One of them, Ricky Gervais. Love him or hate him, like him or loathe him. At the time, it was Twitter. He used to only tweet at the time to do anything to do with animals or animal welfare, and he did nothing along the lines of mental health or anything like that. So for him to get involved in the campaign was massive for the It's Okay to Talk campaign, because he has got millions and millions of followers. Like I say, like him or loathe him, with millions of followers, just that getting that out there was massive for that campaign. Also, we got sports stars. Far left, we got Anthony Joshua and Josh Warrington in the middle, both big in the boxing world, both been quite open and honest about their own mental health struggles, and boxing being that very, still to this day, being that very macho sport. Them being open and honest was massive for the campaign, but also getting other guys to talk. And on the far right there, you've got the Leeds Rhinos captain, which is very poignant because Luke himself actually used to play for Leeds Rhinos, but that was taken from the telly in front of thousands and thousands of people. So sports stars getting involved with it, showing that bit of vulnerability, actually getting and telling men that it is okay to talk. At Andy's Man Club, there's no booking, no charges, no referral necessary. You just got, we say the hardest thing to do is to walk through the door. But if you were to walk through the door, or know someone who was to walk through the door, all we would ask them is their first name, and that's just so we can be polite. We will not take any other details from them. If they don't come back in a few weeks' time, we don't go around knocking on the door, don't send them lots of marketing material. So there's no booking, there's no charges, and there's no referral necessary. It's open to any man over the age of 18 wanting to talk to like-minded men. You do not need to be suicidal to attend an Andy's Man Club. It is a peer-to-peer support group as well. You can come along and talk about anything, and sometimes realizing that you're not the only man that's going through some struggles or has got a struggle going on, it is that peer-to-peer support that helps people through that. It is every Monday at 7 o'clock, except for bank holidays, 7 o'clock till 9 o'clock every Monday. What to expect at Anders Man Club. Now, at Anders Man Club, as I said just a minute ago, the hardest thing to do is to walk through the door. So we have volunteer facilitators. We have over 2,000 volunteers across England, Scotland and Wales. And we have a role called the sweeper role, where men have been, we put these people out there, which are out in the car park or on the door. Men have been brave enough to make the decision to attend an Anders Man Club, but they just can't bring themselves to get out of the car to walk in through the door. So the sweeper is someone that would be out in the car park. We've known guys that have been sat in the car. We tapped on the window and said, "Here for Anders Man Club," and they're like, "Oh," and said, "It's okay. I've been there myself," because that facilitator has walked through the door themselves. When you're ready, let's walk through together, because it's a lot easier when you walk through with somebody else. When you walk through that door, you'll then be taken to the brew station where there's free tea, coffee and biscuits. And a facilitator will go through the evening, a bit like I'm going to do with you guys on the call now. And the facilitator will say how the evening's going to go. So we split into groups. It's about an average of about 15, but some groups may be smaller, some may be bigger, where we have a talking ball. It's a big sponge black football with our logo on it. And this is the talking ball. If you've got the ball, it's your turn to talk, or not to talk if you so wish. You can just pass that ball on, no problem at all. We have a bit of structure to the evening, where we have 5 questions. The first 3 questions are always the same. So the first question is, how's your week been? We just generally want to know how you are. The second one is a positive from your week. Good or bad week, we just want to know one positive that has happened to you that in the last 7 days. Question number 3 is the meat and bones of the evening, and is anything to get off your chest. Now, we don't allow any bad mouthing about any demographics or any professions, because somebody could be that profession in that room or part of that demographic. We also, there's 4 things we don't allow people to talk about at Anders Man Club. The first 2 is politics and religion. Nobody in the world can get on with politics and religion, so we don't want to talk about it on a Monday night. The other one is medication, both prescribed or self-prescribed. We don't want any influence or preaching. What may be good for me may be life-threatening for someone else. And even if you were a trained professional, you don't know enough about that person to be able to give in that advice. And the last one is any criminal investigation, both past or present. 2 reasons for that. What's said in the room stays in the room. If you're to admit you committed a crime, therefore we can no longer keep it confidential. And the second reason, someone's reason they could be at Anders Man Club is because they could be a victim of a crime. So if you're to say they committed it, you're making that person feel uneasy in that room, and we definitely don't want that. Sweeping statements on those are fine. I was having a bad week. I went to church. I felt a lot better. Just can't say what at church made you feel better. I started taking my medication a month ago, and I'm starting to feel the benefits of it. You just can't say what it is you're taking. I got a court case coming up, and I'm really worried about it. Anything else is we're happy for you to talk about. It could be finances, it could be work, it could be home life, it could be just your mental struggles of getting through day to day. They can all come out in that question. We don't have a break. The break is just as important as the questions itself. You could have said something that was quite deep, quite that you want to process yourself, but also, as we said, is peer-to-peer support. So someone could be going through or gone through something you've gone through, and we don't give advice, but it could be the fact of someone saying they have panic attacks, and someone had a method of how they got through a panic attack. Is sharing that experience, is shared experience, peer-to-peer support. After that break, we come back, and questions 4 and 5 change every week. Question 4 is always about hope or purpose, a bit of looking forward rather than looking back. An example of question 4 is which did it the very first session when we were back on the 5th of January. The question was, what's something you're looking forward to in 2026 and why? Now, it could be anything. It could be give up smoking. It could be carry on attending Anders Man Club. It could be to do a couch to 5K, run a marathon, jump out of a plane, go on holiday, but you might start a new job. All those are brilliant things, but the reason for that question is the why. We want to know why it's important, why you're looking forward to it, to give you that purpose, to give you that hope, to something to look forward to rather than something to look back on. Question 5 I Like It and Andy's Man Club. You can answer the question if you feel like you want to. My favourite one of all time comes round about every 9 months. If you want to answer in the chat, feel free to do so. But like an Andy's Man Club, you don't have to. I can see a couple of people on screen, which is good for it. But what's your favourite sandwich filling? Mine's cheese and pickle. Egg mayo, chicken salad, BLT. Tuna mayo, brie and tomato. That's a new one. Love it. Love all these guys. And as I can see from there, there's some great great things coming through on that one. And I can see that some of the people on screen and a couple of people put emojis after it. People were smiling, and that's the purpose of that question. A guy could have walked through the door at 7 o'clock with the world on his shoulders, not knowing how he's going to pay the bills at the end of the month, or he's having a tough time at work, or home life's not great. He could come through thinking he doesn't know a way out. So he's spent the other questions talking about it, but the last one he's just left on a bit of a positive, just knowing that he's seen somebody else has said another sandwich filling that he can't possibly think of, but he's walked out with a smile on his face. So that is what Andy's Man Club is. That's all that happens. We don't wave any magic wands. We as I say, we're peer-to-peer support. We don't give advice. We can signpost people, but that's through experience. That is all that happens at an Andy's Man Club. It is basically some guys getting together in a room, having a chat, having a cup of tea or a coffee if you so wish. And that is all that happens at an Andy's Man Club. So that's what to expect if you're to attend an Andy's Man Club. I said about that one group with 9 men back in 2016. We now have over 330 community groups across England, Scotland, and Wales. On the back of that, we have over 6,700 men use our groups every week. We are growing all the time. It's a good thing. The men are getting we are getting the awareness out there. I'm not here to tell everybody on this call that any man should be attending Andy's Man Club. I'm just making you aware that someone in your life or yourself, if you needed it, was there just to pop along on a Monday night. Some people wouldn't be able to make it in person, either because of physically they may feel uncomfortable being in a room, or the nearest club is too far away from them. So we do run online. Online is run just again 7 o'clock Monday night, exactly the same. If you wanted to go to it, just email info@andismanclub.co.uk. They would send you a registration link, and then they'll send you a link later on that night. The only difference between online and in person is you need to give us more details. Your name, your telephone number, and the address you're going to be at on the evening. This is for safeguarding purposes. If somebody was to say something regarding to harming themselves or they would be in trouble, then we can deal with it with the facilitators there and physically in the group. Online, you're just down the end of a screen and we need to know where you are. So for safeguarding purposes, we just need those questions. We are not going to bombard you with lots of marketing and things like that. It is purely a safeguarding purpose exercise for your own well-being. Talking about the thing about somebody being suicidal, we do have our own safeguarding team that we are facilitators contact, but we also have to bear in mind if someone was to talk about suicide, we have to bear in mind that we are a suicide prevention charity. So if someone was saying that they were suicidal last Tuesday, that's okay to say. We were not going to phone up any services because they're not feeling suicidal at that time. It's just if we have a concern there, right there and then at that time. So the online group is exactly the same. All the questions are the same on a Monday across every single 330 plus clubs. And I say the online is just if people can't make it. As I said at the start, the family's why is to stop other families going through what ours went through. That will always be the why, always be the mission. We're nearly 10 years in. We won't ever forget Andy, but we'll also never forget the why. Talking of families, here's some children that have had it, or their parents or another member of the family or friends has had an impact on by attending Andy's Man Club. Top right, you've got Luke there with his daughter. Bottom right, you've got Ollie there with the baby, with the pink baby grow. Ollie was one of those 9 men that walked through the door that very first night. Ollie actually became the first ever volunteer facilitator. And now he's actually employed by the charity and is on our senior leadership team, heading up our training and development. Next to Ollie, holding the guy with the goatee, holding the baby with the Anders Man Club baby grow. That's Tom. Tom again attended for his own self up in Huddersfield, helped set up a couple more clubs in the area, and then went into the office and volunteered sending out the wristbands, the leaflets, and the business cards we have. To me, Tom's the most important person at Anders Man Club, because not only does he send out those leaflets and business cards, but he sends out the tea and coffee and biscuits we have on a Monday night. So without Tom, I wouldn't be able to have my cup of tea on a Monday night. So he's the most important person. Above Tom there, in the denim jacket, is Alfie. I used to say a lot more about Alfie. Alfie is Andy's nephew, Luke's son. But last year he did a talk at a presentation ceremony or award ceremony, and we put it into this presentation. So I'll let Alfie do all the talking.
I'm here today to speak about something that changed my life, my family's life, and the lives of so many others in ways we never expected. When I was just 6 years old, I lost my uncle to suicide. Even now, 9 years later, I still remember the moment I found out. I burst into screams and tears, desperately hoping what I'd been told wasn't true, and that my uncle hadn't died. It wasn't just my uncle, he was my best friend, he was like a big brother to me. Losing someone who meant that much was heartbreaking and confusing. At that age, I couldn't understand how someone so young, only 23, could be gone. Nothing made sense to me. Andy's Man Club means something different to everyone. For some, it's a place that saved their partner's life. For others, it gave them strength to speak up when they felt like they couldn't. For me, it means something deeper personal. It's about losing my uncle. Sadly, he didn't speak up. He didn't feel like he could. And because of that, he's no longer here. That's why Andy's Man Club matters so much to me. Because it's now a place where men can talk without judgment. A place that reminds us it's okay to talk. Recently, I've started seeing just how many lives Andy's Man Club is saving. I'm hoping we get to a point where we don't need it anymore, where men feel able to speak freely, and suicide is no longer something that steals people from us. I want to do my part. I want to be someone who encourages others to talk, to open up, because I don't want anyone else to go through what my family did. I will continue to do everything I can to make a difference. I miss you, Uncle Andrew. Thank you, everyone.
So that's now a 15-year-old Alfie. It's sometimes I can just carry on straight after, because I've seen that video so many times. Other times it just takes me back, because I do know Alfie. We are a very small staff team, and so knowing someone like Alfie and knowing what he's been through, sometimes just gets me a little bit. He talked about the impact there, and he talked about seeing what Anders Man Club does. This is just a couple more people of the impact. I just read a couple of these out. AMC gave me my life back, a place to be truly myself, supported and never judged. I wouldn't have my best friend if it wasn't for Anders Man Club and the work the lads do. That's facilitators and attendees that we've just written in. There's more on that screen, but it's just all about the impact that we have on people. The impact it's had on myself. I am that one man. I grew up in Bristol, or I've grown up in Bristol. I'm now sort of in my 40s, and always been a happy-go-lucky guy. As I said, massively into sport, always been quite active. Rugby, football, cricket, all those things. I love my running now. But always a worrier, always a panicker, always worried what other people thought of me. Always thought I was never good enough. That I did something that would never good enough. Kind of that imposter syndrome. Always gone through life being that anxious person. If I said hello to somebody and I didn't get the reaction I was expecting back, it could spoil my day. If I upset someone, it would play on my mind for weeks and weeks. 2022, I had a relationship broke down. Realised that my mental health was one of the factors that relationship broke down. I realised I've been suffering for a couple of years with depression. I honestly thought that my family and friends would be better off if I wasn't around. So I had 2 failed attempts at my own life. The second time, family and friends found out, and wanted to help. Mainly, I say mainly for this thing from my mum was the person that got like most involved that I remember at the time, being in a dark place. And along with the NHS, she also wanted to see for anything else outside of it that would be able to help me. And she came up, she managed to find many different places, but one of them was Anne's Mind Club at Gloucestershire Cricket Club, not very far away from the city centre in Bristol, and just said, why don't I give it a go? So the following Monday, I went along, drove down, walked straight past the sweeper because there was no way that I wasn't going in and coming out and messaging my mum that night or the following morning to say that I didn't go. There was no chance of that happening. But as I walked through the doors of Anne's Mind Club, I say the hardest thing is to walk through the door. I walked through the door because I had the support of my mum, but the emotion got on top of me and I started crying my eyes out. The facilitator at the time didn't ask me if I was all right, because he could see I wasn't all right. He didn't tell me I was going to be okay because he didn't know what I was going through. I said, would you like a cup of tea or coffee or a cold drink? Made me a cup of tea, explained as I did to you guys how the evening would go on. I went through the evening, answered all the questions, got some of it off my chest, talked about some of it, but just sort of on the first evening, skimmed the surface of it. Ollie, that guy that was who's now on our SLT team, he said after his first night, he felt like he had 12 cans of Red Bull. For myself, I can't tell you how I felt afterwards, but I do know the following morning I woke up and I'd had the best night's sleep I'd had in ages. And I think it's because I know it's because I released something out of my head and I talked about it rather than bottling it up. So much so that I carried on going. It became part of my Monday night routine every Monday. Even if I was having a good week, I'd still go on a Monday. It was part of my routine to talk about how I was feeling and get things out in the open. After about 7 months, I got asked if I wanted to become part of the volunteer facilitator team. I was still on a journey. I was still sort of improving my mental health with coping different things. But that meant everything to me because, as I said, I went through life thinking I was never good enough. And someone approaching me, asking me to do something made me feel that I was good enough. I became a volunteer, as I say, volunteer facilitator, did that for a couple of years. And then in 2024, the charity advertised for the area lead for the West Country in South Wales. Day before my interview, I found out I was being made redundant. So not only did I want the job, I needed the job. I started working for Anne's Mind Club on the 6th of January 2025. And it's, as I said earlier, I'm not here to tell people they've got to go to Anne's Mind Club. I'm just telling people it's there if they need it. But this always sounds like a sales pitch, and I don't know how else to word it because it is so true. Anne's Mind Club didn't only save my life, it's changed my life, and now it's an honour to sit in front of you here with so many people on this call and just spread the awareness of the amazing work that Anne's Mind Club just did for me, that one man. So I am that one man. We have another video here just where a couple of people talk about their stories, and also you hear a little bit from Luke himself as well.
Worries and anxiety is a big part of my life. Started about 10 years ago. I didn't want to live anymore. I thought the world would be better without me. I thought that maybe if I was to take my own life, I could be with my child. But I was very suicidal at the time. As a child, it was getting bullied and not being able to say how I felt to people. To talk about the problems that I went through as a child and everything that happened, I didn't want to. My worries and anxieties started around the passing of my father in 2013. It affected me in my day-to-day life, it affected my job, it affected relationships. I didn't talk to my friends or family about the problems that were going on. So the easiest thing for me was to not be here. It was a Sunday night, I think it was, and I knew I didn't want to be here. And I was planning that night to do something. Thoughts going through my mind were how I'd be judged by people, you know, real bad thoughts about, you know, getting out of this life. My worries and anxieties probably started a long time ago, but the most recent was last year. My cousin committed suicide. It was very hard to discuss my problems at that moment in time, as I couldn't even string a sentence together. I felt very alone. I had a lot of people around me. I know a lot of people cared, but just something instinctively in me just wouldn't open up. I never spoke about it with anyone. The problems kept me normal in my life. There's a stigma attached to around how a man should appear and what he should say. There's an ideal view of a man, and I think people need to break the cycle of that and just not conform to that. I know a lot of men that have struggled generally
especially in the UK. I think not enough men talk about the problems. The first section I was helping myself was joining Andy's Man Club. The only time I first spoke about my problems was when I first went to Andy's Man Club. I first sought help through Andy's Man Club. It's saved my life, really. My name's Luke Campbell and I'm the founder of Andy's Man Club. I believe male mental health in our country has for a long time now been stigmatised. There's been our 3 stigmas: weakness, burden, embarrassment, and I feel that's a lot of the reason why people don't want to speak. They feel weak to speak, they feel like they'll burden others, and with the lad culture we have with banter, they feel like they're embarrassed to give any vulnerability away. 20 man out there watching this, it's not weak to talk, it's not weak to ask for help. Steps that I've taken to resolve my issues, I've started talking a lot more to people. The importance of talking about how you feel is phenomenal. Talking really opened me up to people, my family, my friends, to turn my life around. I'm happier than I have been in my entire life. No matter what, I talk about everything now. I won't keep anything in at all. If I were going to give any advice, it's talk. But whether it be your loved ones, professionals, your friends, and if you don't have any friends, reach out. You know, if you are willing to reach out, people are willing to help. Getting guided, moving opening up, and giving people hope. Life, that's what Andy's Man Club is all about. My advice to anyone out there is that you will get through this. At times you may think there is no other way out. That relationship breakdown, that debt you're in, or whatever issues you're struggling with, can't get through that, but trust me, you can. I've dealt with enough people that know now that cloud will pass. That roller coaster on where it just seems like you're going down, 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 will take a turn and you'll get back up. You just got to look up and know that the brighter times are coming, and I guarantee, reach out. It's okay to talk.
So again, just more people talking about their journeys, and Luke saying about the stigmatism with men's mental health. Talking about journeys, we have had partnerships. People have put our logo or our sayings on trains, lorries, shopping centres, just spreading that awareness, getting it out there to say that it is okay to talk, and what we're there, so people may see it on as they're on a journey, and they may go away and look it up on the internet and find out what it's about. So one man's journey could be finding it anywhere here, but also along the journeys that we've also talked about. The world of sport is a great way for us to, or we have in the past, get that thing out there to say that it is okay to talk. The bottom left, you'll see some football players warming up in our facilitator tops. Brilliant for 15 to 20 people warming up in front of thousands of people. Again, getting that awareness out there that it is okay to talk. You'll see Damon Hetta there, the darts player on the right hand side in the middle with the red and white top. He's got our logo on his back, so that being televised to millions of people across the world, just him having our logo on the back. He's done plenty of stuff on social media. It was great for us. The Manchester City partnership, again, they came to us saying they wanted to do some mental health stuff. Would we be willing to sort of do things with them, which we obviously took them up on the offer. We actually now have a club at the Etihad off the back of that partnership, and them coming to us. We now have, as I say, we've got a club there, but we had a day where we had our logo put up on all their big screens. At halftime, Luke did a little talk. But one thing I find quite funny after that is 3 weeks after an opening the club at the Etihad up at Manchester City, you've got Andy Forever there, number 23 in a Man United shirt. Old Trafford emailed in and they wanted to do some mental health partnership as well. There is no rivalry when it comes to mental health, so now we do have a club at the Etihad and also at Old Trafford, as well as other clubs within the Football League, but also down to great grassroots do hold as a venue for Andy's Man Club. Running events down on the bottom right hand corner, we are 100% donation led, so everything we get donation wise is worthy to ourselves. So we did a running event where people I had to pay for the entry, but also got sponsored. The top left there is 2 guys running the Great North Run, getting sponsored. We had partnership with them, with the Great Run Company, but also them getting sponsored to actually do the run. There's some dodgy character on the left-hand side because you can only see my face, but that's me running it up at the Great North Run. So, yeah, and the world of sport is a massive way of getting that awareness of we're around, but also getting people to say that it's to talk. The power of a wristband. We were at a music festival and we have a wristband that we can send out to anybody that wanted a wristband, business card or leaflets. I'll talk about that at the end. But the power of a wristband We were at a music festival in Leeds, handing out wristbands to people that were walking past, not knowing who they were, but just anybody that would take a wristband, take a free wristband, take it. And we managed to give one to a producer on Emmerdale. She went away to the production company saying, we know that Paddy the Vet, I don't know if anybody on here watches Emmerdale, but Paddy the Vet was going through a tough time in the programme, his character. He went missing. His friends managed to find him, and one of the things the storyline worked with Anna's Mind Club and the production company to get it right, but also Paddy attended an Anna's Mind Club in Emmerdale, so great, massive awareness for us. It showed the sweeper role, it showed the circle, and it showed the talking ball. There was also a spin-off documentary done on it as well, but the thing with Emmerdale is we know from the stats it is watched predominantly by women. And off the back of that, millions and millions of women watching it have become our biggest supporters, our biggest advocates. I got invited on this call today by a female volunteers we have out there. My partner now, she pushes everything with the, at AMC. She thinks it's great because she may say sometimes now I talk a bit too much, but that's better than not talking at all. But these guys in this picture are volunteers. Yes, we are for men only between 7 and 9 on a Monday night, but the rest of the time, men going along talking. Everyone's got a female in the family, whether it be a mum, sister, partner, daughter, niece, friend. They've all got one in their life. So the women in our lives are a massive advocate and are definitely our biggest advocate. So that's also a great thing for us. A few things here just that men have benefited from. The top middle one is how Fife dad Kenny turned his life around after depression and alcohol left him at rock bottom. Kenny's been involved with the charity a lot longer than myself. He does the same role as myself up in Fife, but just been attending longer and working for the charity longer. But last October, Kenny celebrated being 4 years sober. And Kenny says that there's many factors to it, but one of the main ones was that talking in a non-judgmental environment at Anna's Man Club on a Monday night about how he felt, about how people made him feel about not drinking, said it was a massive thing for him and why he's been sober for so long. So there's other ones on there. Again, a bit more of that impact that people have had, but I just said that one about Kenny for today. We've won awards. You saw Alfie at the Yorkshire Choice Awards. We won the Queen's Award, but I always say the best reward will be when that one man walks through the door. And walks out a little bit lighter, but also comes back the following week. But it's mainly when that one man walks through the door. So for anybody on this call, if you're going through a storm, or you know someone is going through a storm, or just been through one, or it could be a trauma from 20 years ago, go onto the website, www.andersmanclub.co.uk. There's a location finder there, so you can type in either your postcode, your town, or your city, and it'll bring up where the nearest ones are to you. If there isn't one in the area, then please do look at the online option, or if there's someone else you're thinking of that you want to send it elsewhere, then do so. The online option, or any questions after this, or if you wanted any leaflets, business cards, or wristbands sent to wherever you are in the country, info@andersmanclub.co.uk, and they will be able to send that out to yourselves. I will now take any questions if anybody has any.
I'm just going to kick off one then, Bart, if that's okay. So I'm just going to echo some of the things that have been coming through in the chat, because it's really difficult to keep up with it when you're trying to present at the same time. So on behalf of everybody, we are so glad that you are still with us. You've got 173 people on this call. You can go out and spread your word. So yeah, we just want to say a really big thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions? There was one about where can you signpost younger people to 16 to 17, and we posted in there about the Hub of Hope. Is that one that you would have done?
That's the one I was going to back up with. That's the main question to get asked. Females and anybody under the age of 18. We're not saying that those people don't need help, but what we are saying is that over 18. For safeguarding, it's easy just to walk through the door because you're 18, you're able to do it. someone just put Papyrus on there. Hub of Hope is where we signpost. It's just it. And this Mountain Club over 18 males is just our niche, and that's just where we go with it. So it's not me saying that those people don't need help, but Hub of Hope and other Papyrus and things like that, wonderful charities. We don't have any competition. It's all about getting everybody talking and make everybody sort of having that help with their mental health.
Brilliant, thank you. Karen, do you want to come in with your question?
Yeah, it's not really a question. It's just to flag to everybody else on the call how accessible Andy's Man Club speakers always are. We've had them talk at our CSU. I've had them talk at Gateshead FT. You know, they've always been willing to come and do a similar presentation to the one that Bart's done and spread the news. So if you haven't had them at your organisation, now you're going to get overwhelmed with people, but they are really, really willing to come and do a similar session to this, and it's always amazing, and it always gets people thinking. I don't know who the best contact is, Bart. I can't remember how we did it.
It's just that everything through info@andersmindclub.co.uk, because what they'll do is they'll put you to, if you want it in person, or they'll basically look after someone that's the area lead. It's just the fact that I've got past this one. They'll send it out to people, and like you say, we're very busy, but we will always try and accommodate as much as we possibly can where it comes to presentations and things.
Yeah, I think we have to schedule you in.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it's just, and especially the month of November, it seems to go very, very crazy. I'm sort of still catching up now. I did see somebody put about a logo for a running top. Again, send that to info@Anders Mind Club, and they'll send you a high resolution logo that can be used. If anybody wants anything electronically, that can be sent as well. The leaflets and business cards can also be sent as well. So yeah.
Brilliant, thanks.
Amazing. So loads and loads of resources out there for people, and thank you so much for coming in and spending your time in telling us all about it. All right. If there aren't any other questions, we'll let you get on, but thank you again. Really good to see you. Thanks for your presentation.
Will you do me a favor later on, just because I know the chat's going through, will you just send out the website and the email address? The email address is for absolutely any questions, absolutely anything afterwards, that we can send out the wristbands, anything along those lines. If you could just reiterate that to the people, just I know there's a few people asking that question. So yeah.
Absolutely, will do. Thank you, Bart.
Thank you. Have a great day, everybody. Remember, it's
Cheers,
okay
Andy.
to talk. Cheers.
Great. Okay, we're now going to move on to Stephen McNally, who's going to give us a talk on his experience of mental health. Stephen, are you ready to go?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, we'll hand over to you. We'll do questions at the end. And yeah, thank you very much.
Hi everyone, I'm Stephen McNally. I'm Deputy Director of Finance at NHS Sussex ICB. I've lived in Sussex for about 27 years. I started off as a cashier in our local hospital, and I worked through each of the bands, progressing about every 3 years, which might have been a contributor towards my story. So I've been asked to talk about breaking the silence, challenging the stigma, and encouraging open conversations. I haven't done a slide deck because I was just going to talk openly to you about my experience, and then hopefully we'll have a few questions. So Andy would have been through the mental health affects everyone, and men generally suffer in silence due to stigmas, such as you're a man up. And when you're a child, you say you're a big boy, or boys don't cry. So that's kind of set in your mindset right from as a child. And then so I wanted to go from my own experience. So as I said, I progressed through the levels, and I've always thought that someone was about to find me out. That eventually someone would say you're a fraud and you'll just keep getting promoted. And then about 2014, there was an incident at work which pushed me a bit too far. And I was struggling with my mental health, and my director at the time, the Director of Finance, approached me and said, Stephen, we can see you're struggling. Are you sure you're okay? Do you need some support? We're really worried about you. And I tried to assure him I was okay, but then he went and spoke to our Chief Officer of People, and she's also a nurse. And she took me into her office and said, Stephen, I can see what's going on. I'm going to stand over you until you ring the GP and you will get some support. So at that point, I had to ring my GP and say I was struggling with my mental health. And my GP managed to fit me in that day. And then they eventually signed me off for 2 weeks. And at that point, I was still in denial, saying I was fine. And I went back to work after 2 weeks. And I was in work about half an hour. And then I broke down and I couldn't cope anymore. So I went straight back to the GP that day. And then they suggested that I take some medication. And at that point, I was still of the stigma, I don't need medication, I'm okay. Medication's for people who can't cope. I was watching films like About a Boy where women's groups get together and cry, and I had this stigma about medication. I eventually agreed with the medication, and the GP said that they would then refer me to counselling. And then, because of who I was, I contacted a running friend who is the head of mental health commissioning, and they managed to get me to the top of the list. I know it's a bit of an abusive position, but I really needed it at that point. So I went to the counselling, and I remember the first day I said, I don't want to talk about my childhood and I don't want to talk about my family. And now I look back, it's quite a red flag. And the counsellor did tell me that at the end of the 12 weeks. So I did get 12 weeks of sessions. I spent the first few weeks just going through the motion because I was thinking this is all a bit fluffy, a bit airy-fairy. Although my wife is a therapist, I still was a bit, wasn't really believing it. But I was continuing to spiral downwards. So I was crying. I couldn't have any conversation with anyone. And then I had a quite open conversation with my wife that I was thinking that she was waiting for something to be wrong, and then that would be it. We could get divorced. And these are the thoughts that I constantly think. And then I said this in my counselling. It was like a breakthrough session in my counselling, and I suddenly started to engage in the counselling and start to see the benefits of it. And I also had my running friend who I went running with. Unfortunately, my running friend passed away after 6 months after that with lung cancer. And then I tried too hard at running and then slipped a disc, and I haven't been able to run since. So I kept thinking, everything's going wrong, what's the point? And then I explained all this to my counsellor, and we just talked through my thoughts, and that really helped. And then I started to learn new skills within the counselling, and I think that's when my healing process started. And then I always thought that I don't need to tell anyone, but my counsellor encouraged me to create a small group of people. So I contacted my colleagues at work, and we created a small group of friends who we still meet every quarter. We go for dinner. And the head of HR and the chief officer met me individually each week on alternate times just to have a coffee with me, to check in with me. And I found that really supportive. And my line manager was in contact with me the whole time, checking I was okay. And then I did return to work after 16 weeks. And then I found people saying to me, oh, you don't need to take medication, you need to get rid of that. You shouldn't be taking antidepressants. And then I realised that I don't really need to be around these people. So I started to change my friendship groups at work. And I found that more people coming to me saying they were also feeling like that, but they didn't know who to talk to. And me being quite open about it encouraged them to talk to me. So I started a process of changing the one-to-ones in the organisation so that we did discuss how people were as part of the weekly one-to-ones. So the first half of the session was all about how are you feeling, and asking everyone twice. When you say, are you? They go, oh, I'm okay. And then they say, are you sure you're okay? And I got a bit of a reputation of all my one-to-ones, people came out with a box of tissues. And I was thinking, oh, this is not good. But luckily it wasn't because I was shouting at them. So I always encourage people to speak up, and I always say to people that you should be kind to it, because you don't know what anyone else is going through, and make sure you're kind the whole time. So for me, the close network of friends and then the tools I learned for counselling really helped. So I thought I was doing fine. And then in 2018, I got another promotion, and then I started to feel like I was getting everything wrong again. And I went to my line manager and said I was struggling. and they took it like I couldn't do the job more, that my mental health was struggling. So I contacted occupational health, and then I had CBT with a clinical psychologist, and we were just testing out my thoughts, showing that they're not correct. What I was thinking wasn't true, and about 90% of what I thought was incorrect, false. It was all fine. But one thing I do remember, the General Hospital's at the top of a hill in Brighton, and the hill's about a mile long, and it's locally called Cardiac Hill. So I used to walk from the train station. I used to get there 15 minutes early just to catch my breath. But it also let me process what I was going to talk about in the session, and I found that really useful. And I kind of bonded with that hill, and it got me in the right mindset. And then last year at work, I made it to deputy director, and then I had a bit of a relapse again. And I contacted my line manager, who's very supportive. And then I had talking therapy sessions over the phone. I was a bit skeptical at first, that previously it being face to face, and now these are over the phone. So what would work on the phone? But I found them really useful. And it was just about talking about the negative thoughts and how to process them and how they're not correct. And I have a very supportive GP who's been brilliant, who always checks in with me. And during this time, my GP was checking in with me again, and he's been great at that. So I now know it is a long-term condition that I need to manage, and even things are going well, it does creep up on me without noticing, and I'm learning to recognise it. But as a manager, I'm kind of expected to show strength and get on with it, and I think, okay, that I can cope with the pressure. And I'm quite open with the team that these things do go on, and I do get lots of the team approaching me. And I had a junior member of the team approach me last week just to ask how I was. It was a bit of a shock. And they were just checking in, asking me out of 10, how did I feel? And I felt that was really kind of them, and I told them it was really kind. And if they had anything, they should just come and talk to me. And I think I've embedded this openness in the organisation. And then I think to change things, we are all people, and I always encourage to ask twice. And I always, if I see someone struggling, I put in an appointment for them to go for a coffee just to have a chat. But I find that myself, for example, I wear a mask most of the time. So people see me jolly and smiley in the office, but I might be really low, and it's difficult to tell. So people do need to speak up about it. And then I found it's best to be open, and then it becomes a normal conversation. So in our organisation, we do talk about it a lot, and it helps with our one-to-ones that we set a format for everyone to talk about it. I think from my personal point of view, everyone struggles, and it's just ask for help with someone and try and build some close relationships. That's all I was going to say about my story, but see if anyone had any questions.
Thank you, Stephen. It's very powerful to hear such a personal story. So thank you for sharing it with us. It's a very difficult thing to do, and very strong thing to do. Lots of positive messages coming through on the chat. I wondered if you just wanted to talk a little bit more about imposter syndrome and how you would advise people who are encountering imposter syndrome to change their mindset or to get the support that they need.
So as part of my work, I'm part of the One NHS Finance sponsorship, and I sponsor some people, and I also sponsor people in the organisation, and I mentor some people who are doing their chartered accountancy. And I always tell them that we're all winging it, really. No one really knows. So the reason we gave you the job is because we think you can do it. Someone believes in you. So you just need to believe in yourself. And if you test it, you actually do know what you're doing. I think every single person has imposter syndrome to some degree. And that I always believe in my staff and tell them that they can do it. And I would encourage you to believe in yourself. You can do it. We all feel it. That's fine. It's natural.
Brilliant. Thank you. Any questions that anybody wants to ask directly? Otherwise, I'll keep monitoring the chat. Elaine?
I'd like to say thank you for being so open and so honest. it's really difficult as a manager to be so honest with their staff that you've got problems. I have problems. But how do you prevent taking all of everybody else's pain and anxiety when you ask them how you're feeling today, what's going on in your one-to-ones? I have a big team, and like you, I take that with me, and it's weighing me down now, and I don't know how to deal with that.
So I always tell them that I'm not a trained therapist, I'm not a counsellor, and if they need to support, I'll help them get support. I often refer people to occupational health or say you should seek talking therapy support. But I do get that you're not. I try not to take their problems with me because I've got enough on my shoulders on my own.
Yeah,
it's really difficult.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Helen?
Hi, Stephen. Thanks very much for that. I was just wondering, as a colleague or a friend or a manager, if somebody is obviously not okay, but thinks they are okay, as you were initially, have you got any suggestions for how best to approach that to sort of let them know that to get them to get help if they're saying they think they're all right?
So I said I was all right until the chief people officer just stood over me and made me. But I was a close friend of the chief. She knew me personally, so that helped that I would listen to her. When we have staff who are not okay, and I ask them, "Are you okay?" and they say, "Yeah, I'm fine," and I double check, and they still say they're fine, I'll say, if it's impacting their work, I'll say, "Is there something impacting your work?" I think that's where your line management skills come in. Is there something that's happening in your outside of work that you want to share? If they don't want to share, you can't make them share. But if you think they do need help, you can say you're really concerned about them. Let them know that you're concerned about them. You're worried about them. And just keep checking in on them.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. There was a comment around how hard it is now to use emotional intelligence as a manager when you're managing a lot more virtually than you would have been in the past. Have you got any reflections on that at all, Stephen?
Yeah, so when we went into lockdown, I set up I insisted that all the team join. I know let's go back on the word insisted. I encouraged the whole team to join at something called coffee and chat. So 12 till 12:30 every day. It's work time, not your lunchtime, where we all just get together and everyone has their camera on. And we just ask, on a Monday, we ask, how was everybody's weekend? On a Friday, we ask, what's people's plans for the weekend? We celebrate birthdays and people having babies. Then we do mini quizzes. It's just trying to bond as a team. So we merged organisations during lockdown and we bonded a lot quicker than if we were in separate offices. So we all now one team. But as we started going in, I did insist that the team come in once a fortnight so I could see them face to face. And everyone has their one-to-ones when they're in the office. Because like you say, you can't really tell on Teams. You can see someone, but you don't know if they're all right. It is really difficult. We really struggled with the Teams office balance.
Yeah. Keith, your hand went up and then down. Was that a mispress?
Yeah, apology.
No worries. Any other questions for Stephen? Okay, I think. Oh, go on, Catherine.
Hi, Stephen. Hi, Stephen. Thank you ever so much for sharing. That was really interesting, and obviously real. I missed the bit about the medication because my connection dropped off. Did you say that you were advised to go on medication, or you weren't?
So my GP recommended it, and I said no.
Right. Okay.
And then the following week, my GP recommended it again, and I agreed. It was like a process of acceptance.
And did it help?
And then it really helped. It's like there was a connection missing, and the medication helped that connection make it really calmed me down a lot. And then I still take that medication every day.
Yeah.
I just treat it as part of my ongoing health.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. Cheers.
Ken?
Hi, Stephen. I'd just like to ask, because at the end of 2023, I was in a very similar position to you, and I ended up being off work for 3 months. But since then, I've really got involved with health and well-being in the mental health aspect of work. And one of the things that we're doing at our trust is really pushing so that the visibility of what help is available is made clear to everyone. Is that something that you did at your trust, or was something that was already in place?
Yeah, so we had a working group who had to design the ways of working once lockdown started. So as part of that working group, we made sure there was packages to help people and all the support and everything was clear on the internet where people could go. And we do talk about it quite a lot in our weekly webinars with the chief exec. So he comes on and talks, and people turn up each time to talk through it. And mental health is very high profile in our organisation.
Okay, and can I also ask, because the main help I got from our health and wellbeing was they pointed me towards the employee assistance program.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, if that was just a massive help. I ended up having counselling for 6-8 weeks, and that's basically the only reason I ended up going back to work, was through that program. So I'd just like to reiterate, if anybody's in that similar position, I would definitely consider speaking to your assistance program, because they can give you all the help and support that you need.
Yeah, I added to that. My assistance program helped me with CBT, and that was my walking up the hill. That was through occupational health as well.
Yeah.
The help is there if we access it, and sometimes people are a bit hesitant to access it, but they are very willing to help and they're really supportive.
And I think the key message I'm hearing is that you just need to keep asking, because as you said, the first couple of times you were adverse to having that help, but it was the right thing in the end.
I think as managers and leaders, we need to encourage our staff that the help is there, and if they're going through it, they're not alone. Other people, I like to say, I've done it, it's fine, you can go to it. There's no stigma or negativity about it.
So what would you say?
Yeah, it's a bit like saying to your line manager, I'm weak, or I'm not good at my job, or I'm struggling. And those were my thoughts, but it's not like that. They're very supportive. They just want you to be the best version of you for your job.
Yeah. So if someone's struggling at the moment, what would you recommend is the first steps they should take towards seeking that help?
Firstly, you should speak to your line manager or one of your directors. They're always open to talk to you, and talk to your occupational. They will help you get referred to your occupational health if that's the right process for you, or signpost you to services that are in the NHS too. That you just need to ask. I know it's really difficult to ask for help, but it is there to support you.
Yeah. Are there any final questions for Stephen? Ken?
Yeah, sorry, I just forgot to mention, but another outlet is next month I'm doing the mental health first aider course. So that's another option that should be available to anybody with interests if they want somebody to talk to.
Yep, that's a good recommendation as well. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing, Stephen. On behalf of everybody, I think that was a really, really inspirational talk. So thanks for coming along. we are now going to break for lunch. We've got until 12:30, and at 12:30, Dr. Bird is going to come and talk to us about your gut as your second brain. Just to say a huge thank you again to all of our speakers from this morning. Hopefully you agree it was really, really brilliant. I thought it was going to be brilliant, and it is. So we're gonna finish on a really good one as well. Dr. William Bird at 12:30. We've got one more session for today, and that's with Dr. William Bird, who's going to be talking to us about your gut as your second brain. Dr. Bird is a regular attender at these conferences and backed by popular demand. We'll do questions at the end again, but yeah, if you are ready to go, William, I'll hand over to you.
I have a feeling, Johanna, that he's not currently on. I'm just going to see where he is.
Okie doke. I couldn't scroll through the 134 quickly enough. So while we're just checking, again, if anybody's got any feedback on what events they would really benefit from, or that their staff would really benefit from, please do let us know in the chat or via email. And we basically design all of our program around what people have told us. So it is all welcome, and you can see from the program today how we've responded to what people have recommended. So hopefully it is ticking boxes today. But if it's not, just let us know and we can change it for next time.
Oh, I can see he's just joined the call.
Hi.
Dr.
Yes, William is just joining, so because he's remote, he's not in the office today.
Thank you.
Okay.
William, are you with us?
I am indeed. I do apologise on that.
Not at all. Not at
Welcome,
all.
everyone.
I was just saying that you're a regular attender here and backed by popular demand. So I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for having me back again, because I do really love it, and particularly the in-person ones where I just see you all so enthusiastic. So don't think this is my bedroom or my back room with some grand background there. It's simply I'm in a council building, believe it or not, Highlands House in Essex. So this is how the council lives in Essex. Very, very nice indeed. If anyone knows Highlands House outside Chelmsford. So what I'm going to be doing today is about the gut biome. And about how we have two brains. One of them is the gut and the other is our brain that we know about, and the two link together. And that's going to be the rather kind of strange understanding of how those two connect, but also how they're connected because of bacteria, the gut biome, which we all know about. So I'm going to go through with this. And Natasha, I don't know if it sounds as though you're absolutely on time. So tell me when you're scheduled, because I want to get lots of questions in as well. So we make sure that we get everyone on board.
So this is until 1:30.
Okay, that's perfect. So really the most extraordinary thing is that most of the genes in our body are actually nothing to do with us. I'll just see if I can get that. Is that okay? Can everyone see that? Perfect. So I'm going to start from just at the very beginning to understand why this all fits together into what we've been talking about before, which is about resilience and about health creation and about everything else. And how does the gut biome? It just seems to be very disconnected. So we have talked about increasing your resilience so that you can feel connected with other people, you feel more robust, you don't feel quite so stressed. And if you can get all of that, and that's about connection to place and people, then you reduce that chronic stress. And chronic stress is when adrenaline is constantly being pumped out. And actually, it stops you from performing very well. Acute stress makes you perform really well because you're motivated. Chronic stress is when you get day in, day out stress hormones. And actually what happens is it takes it from the frontal part of the brain, which as accountants, you need a lot of. And if you don't get that frontal part of the brain getting all the energy, then you start to perform less well. So when you have chronic stress, because it's using up so much energy in the rest of the body, it takes some of the energy away from areas it doesn't think is very important for the body to function. And unfortunately, one of those is the frontal part of the brain. And then what we also find, if you get that chronic stress, you also change your behaviors and your emotions, where you are in now survival mode. So you'll eat as much as you possibly can. You become far less active because that's wasting calories, and actually even your addictive behavior changes. And if you have all of those lifestyles of eating the wrong things and not exercising and being addiction, it's going to affect the gut biome. And that actually goes back up again to increasing your resilience. So it's two-way. It's got arrows going down, but it goes both ways. And then, of course, if you get your gut biome, as we're going to hear, all right, your body now can get energy into the areas it needs to, which is into the proper immune system to repair, rather than this chronic inflammation where the immune system is whirring away like the background of your computer when it's not working because it's got a big calculation or something's gone wrong. Everything is slow when you type it in because all the energy of the computer, but for CPU, is going towards that whatever's going on. The same with chronic inflammation. If you have chronic inflammation, your immune system is kind of fighting itself. It's not doing a very particular job. It's gone a bit kind of haywire. And therefore that takes energy away. So everything you do gets slower, and including, if that carries on for a long period of time, you get disease. So you can see how important the gut biome is, that actually it's not just a diet, it's actually other things of chronic stress that make it worse. And that has a major effect on our body. So Professor Strachan at St. George's was the first person to come up with the hygiene hypothesis. So we'd always known that bacteria are bad things. And the less bacteria you have, the better. So we used to use bleach in the houses to make sure that no surface has got anything left on it at all, apart from bleach. And you hoover the floor as much as you possibly can. You make sure your children don't get dirty, and you try and keep away any bugs as possible. And his proposal was actually that's causing problems. And the problems it's causing as an increase in multiple sclerosis, an increase in Crohn's disease, type 1 diabetes, eczema, asthma, hay fever, peanut allergies, the list goes on. And if you can look at those figures there, you can see that even though this is a little bit old, this is up to 2000, those numbers have continued to go up. And what his theory is that we're creating a sterile environment to live in, and our body needs bacteria and bugs to regulate our immune system and to keep us healthy. So that was right back in 1989. And he kind of proved it through a study which showed that the eldest of a family will have 15% of allergies, 15% of them will have allergies. Whereas if you look at all the second children, they only have 12%. And then if you look at the third child, that goes down to 7%. So what on earth is going on here? And it carries on going down. If you're the fourth child or the fifth child, you get less and less. And what was happening is that the firstborn doesn't really have many bugs to be exposed. So it doesn't have the kind of rough and tumble with your siblings so much. So you grow up on your own and you don't have lots of bugs coming in. And then obviously the second child has an older child now to rough and tumble and get infections. And then the third child has lots more infections coming in because you've got two older children who are bringing infections in, and it's a bit more rough and tumble. And what they're realizing is that the more infections those children had, the less likely they were going to get these problems of allergies. So when I'm still a GP, and when patients come and say, oh, I can't bear it, my child has had 3 infections, I say, celebrate. Don't quite say it like that. I'm not that callous a GP. But I said, don't worry. These infections they're getting, whether it's ear infections and throat or tonsillitis or just a cold or bronchiolitis and everything, all of them are actually helping your child develop a stronger immune system. And actually, every child is meant to get 7 to 8 infections a year by average. So this was a debate which really rocked the system because we'd always been thinking clean is best. And when you look at the birth order of children born in 1958, obviously really old, even older than me, you'll see that actually you had that kind of gradient from birth order of 1 to 5. But those born in 1970, you also see a gradient, but you can see how much higher it is. And I haven't got the figures of those born in 1990, but that's even further up. So you're still getting this gradient, although a lot more children are going to nursery now, so it's getting a little bit flatter because they're not so much isolated, but we're seeing higher and higher levels of allergies. So this was the issue that was happening. And what he said was that we've lost our old friends. These are not college friends or from university. These are bugs which we grew up with. And when I say grew up with, evolved with from hundreds of thousands, if not in some cases 500,000 years, where we've all worked together as species. And he divided them into 3 groups. One group was the commensal microbes, the human microbiome, which we're going to talk about today. And there's a lot of bugs in there. The next one was the old infections. They're the ones that you get as a child. So these are the viruses and other things that you get. And there's something called H. pylori as well, which some of you will know because it causes ulcers. But actually, H. pylori can also turn nasty, but it can also be a very protective. And then the environmental saprophytes are the things outdoors. So they're all the bugs you find in the soil. And without these, our immune system goes completely haywire and it's unregulated, and it starts to attack the body. Hence, you've got all of those things like type 1 diabetes, asthma, allergies, hay fever, and even Crohn's disease. So this is a group of bugs there, and you can see where they come from. On the right is a child. Now, some of you might be horrified by that, and some of you might be smiling, thinking that's exactly what my daughter does. And if you haven't got children, you'll be horrified, I'm sure, anyway. But that, I'm afraid, is what a child should be doing. They should be having contact with this soil as much as possible at the earliest age as possible. So going out on nature walks where they're picking up leaves and throwing them up is all good. And it's really essential. And if you look at the things that other ways you can get the bugs, a vaginal birth will give you a good head start. You don't need to have that completely. So if you've had cesarean sections, don't worry too much, because there are other ways you can get that, but the vaginal birth does give some of it. Breastfeeding, likewise, even tiny bit of breastfeeding early on can give the bug there called B. infantis. Early family contact gives you the H. pylori, and that's actually mostly good, but it turns bad when we don't look after it. The fiber-rich stuff, and we'll talk a lot about all the bugs in the gut. And then outdoors, you've got soil, and that's really important. And then there's this extraordinary fact that any child that's been brought up with pigs doesn't ever get asthma. So I'm sure there must be some exceptions, but pigs and other livestock, including pets of dogs and cats, offer a lot of protection, but only if the child is brought up with them from birth. So if you introduce a pet to a child that's got lots of allergies later on in their life, it may be that they become allergic to it, in which case that's different. So we're talking about the very earliest connection is from a child under the age of 6 months of being connected to pets. And the other things, other viral infections, and we know about them, they are bad, and we don't want to wish anything like Epstein-Barr virus, which is glandular fever, or cytomegalovirus, the CMV. But these are really important in regulating the immune system. So we've now got all these bugs which we need. Why? What are they doing? Well, this hygiene hypothesis even went further and looked at how our immune system develops. So those old friends now affect the immature dendrocytes. So that's a kind of bit of a cell that can go into anything in the immune system. It's like you've heard of stem cells. Stem cells can grow into any different kind of cell in the body, but it starts as a stem cell. Like these as well, they can come any different part of the immune system. And what the old friends do is they change that immature dendrocyte to a regulatory dendrocyte. And that makes T cells, which are part of the immune system, go to regulatory T cells. These are the prefects. These are the responsible ones. These are the sergeant majors, or the the people in the army. These are the parents at a teenage party. They just stop the immune system from going completely AWOL. And if we don't have those, the immune system does go AWOL, and you get asthma and eczema and hay fever. All the fact that your immune system is fighting against you, coronas, loads of different things. And we can't do that ourselves. We cannot make those immature dendrocytes go to regulatory dendrocytes to go to regulatory T cells without those old friends. They have to be there. So now we know why, if you don't have those bugs around you, you're going to start to have more problems with your autoimmune conditions. And what it can do, so we look at our environment now, and we realize that there's an environment where we're completely devoid of nature and even soil by high-rise flats. And if you look at that, where there are few old friends, fewer regulatory cells, depression, even depression. Let me just emphasize that. Depression can be from autoimmune, from inflammatory, multiple sclerosis, type 1 diabetes, Crohn's disease, allergies, anxiety, eczema, hay fever, all of those things. So we're now getting into territory which is not just I'm getting a bit of an allergy or a rash, but we're starting to see some big ticket items here of depression and anxiety because of the inflammation that goes on in the brain, because the immune system is not being very clever. Compared to if you've got lots of old friends, by being outdoors a lot, by getting a bit of mud, by having, as we'll see, a lot of dietary things, that you can actually regulate your immune system. So that was a fantastic piece of work which helped understand what was going on here. So they're links. So there are 4 links between the gut and the brain. This is only just to really tell you. We know that an unhealthy gut microbiome can lead to increase of anxiety and depression. But it can also go the other way around. Anxiety and depression can lead to a poor gut biome. Chronic stress leads to a poor gut biome. So it's a two-way street. You can get hormones, you can get the vagus nerve, you get bacteria parts, and you get cytokines. Cytokines are the messengers of the immune system to tell what's going on. And they're constantly going. But the vagus nerve is the one that's probably the most important, or one of the most important. It's a nerve, the longest nerve in the body, if you ever wanted a pub quiz, and it goes from the head all the way down to the gut. And it's constantly sending messages. It's the one that slows your heart rate and makes you feel much calmer because of the parasympathetic nervous system. But it's got other purposes, like you can see here. And you can therefore see that there's a kind of two-way street there. So this depression of the immune system, the endocrine system, and the central nervous system, that bidirectional thing is constantly going on. So we also know that when you are being in the first 6 months of life, that the brain development depends on the gut microbiome being intact. And our memory and behavior can actually be affecting it, not just in that time, but actually all the way through our life. It has more effect in that in a young person, but it can do that for the rest of your life. So the memory and behavior is because inflammation is dropped. And if you drop your inflammation of the brain, your memory works better, your behavior works better. So the brain is much more efficient when it's not being inflamed. And that's one of the key things that we're now realizing. It also affects what's called the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, the HPA stress axis in childhood. So if you've got a very healthy gut microbiome as a child, it will mean that axis stress levels will be quite moderated. So you'd have to have a lot of stress to activate it. Whereas if you have a really poor gut microbiome, then you don't need very much stress to get someone anxious or get a child anxious. So this increase of anxiety that we're getting, this increasing of worry and concern and panic attacks that we're seeing, particularly in young people, may well be, and I'm not going to say for 100%, but without any doubt, a contribution of the gut microbiome is leading to that, because in fact we've got such poor microbiomes compared to what we did have. And a lot of this is also about the leaky gut, causing chronic inflammation. So let me just go through this. It is quite an extraordinary thing that you have that you've got this little tube in your body that's got poo in it. Okay, let's be very precise here. You've got a tube which is not a particularly nice content, and a micron away from that poo is you've got blood, and you've got your sterile environment of your bloodstream. And you just imagine a tiniest little bit, something going through that gut wall could cause all sorts of problems of septicemia and other things like that. So what happens, and let's take emulsifiers from highly processed food. They're in the gut, and what they do is that they change the diversity of gut. They're quite poisonous to some bacteria, but they're also very helpful to some of them. But unfortunately, they're helpful to the wrong ones, and they're not very nice to the good ones. So they change the diversity of a bacteria by making less diversity, but unfortunately getting rid of some of the good ones and actually promoting some of the bad ones. That's just how it works. Unfortunately, the bad ones tend to be a little bit more resilient. So they change that diversity, but not only that, they make the bad ones more potent to do more damage. So now you've got the good ones going, the bad ones increasing, and the bad ones that increase are actually even worse than they were beforehand. And what these little bacteria do is they thin the mucus. So that mucous membrane is protecting you from all of that nastiness in your gut to your bloodstream. And they thin the mucus because they eat it, because you've now got a lot of bacteria who are getting hungry, the nasty ones, and they tend to eat it. They also don't look after that mucus. Now we've got breaks in the mucus, so bacteria can get inside what's called these tight junctions between the cells, which are really tight because they don't want anything to go through it. And when the bacteria go through there, all the gates that are there to stop anything going through are not working, because you've now got all the guards and everything else where the bacteria are working so cleverly with us and working so amazingly. That's all gone. You've left the guards off the gates anymore. So these bacteria or bacteria parts can come in. And then once they're in the gut, they start to cause inflammation, colitis, obesity, diabetes, anxiety, depression, type 1 diabetes, and many other things. They create inflammation because your body now is responding to a breach in the system. So those emulsifiers have changed the gut microbiome. And through that cascade, you've now got little parts of bacteria in your gut, which your immune system, of course, sees as a threat and activates itself. And suddenly you've got all this chronic inflammation. And the diversity, I was saying it get rid of some of it, but diversity is extraordinary. 96% of all the genomes in our body are from bacteria. 4% are us. Now, that's not by weight, obviously. You're not one big lump of bacteria with a couple of legs and arms on it, because these cells are tiny compared to ours. But they are, and we're about 50-50 bacteria to normal human cells, but the bacteria cells are way smaller, which is why you don't feel it. And it's probably only 0.5 kilogram, I think, of the gut biome, which is what it's weighed. It's not a very big amount, but the genetic amount in our body is very, very much dominated by the bacteria. And we also know that this gut bacteria, once it gets established, it kind of starts with that brain in the gut. It starts to kind of direct us in how we feel, how we are, even our weight. So they transplanted microbiota from a gut of a thin or an obese person to a little mouse. I know it's not very nice, which had no germs in it at all. They'd got rid of all the germs, all the bacteria in the gut are gone. And the result was the mouse adopted the human donor's weight. So those obese people who gave their microbiota to the mouse created an obese mouse, and the microbiota of a thin person gave a thin mouse. And there have even been stories which have started to become a little bit more kind of proven, that they use the sort of fecal transplant, and I won't go into the details because it's lunchtime, but this is basically when you donate your poo to someone else. And it's done very, very nicely. It doesn't smell or anything, but it's still a funny way of thinking about it. But a boyfriend gave his girlfriend a transplant, a fecal transplant, because she had Crohn's disease, really bad, and she was needing lots of operations and things. So they said, look, if you gave it, and he gave it to her, and she got a lot better. Her Crohn's disease got considerably better, but she also adopted some of his characteristics, and they started to realize that she was starting to become really tidy, and she'd never been tidy in her life. So we don't know yet about how much of our personality and everything else is taken on by our gut biome, but way more than we probably think. And there is all these neurons and networks in the gut, which actually act as a second brain. So let's think of a couple of examples here. So how can your diet reduce the tiredness? Well, an anti-inflammatory diet reduces that chronic inflammation. So the anti-inflammatory basically means, we talked about emulsifiers, that allows little bacteria parts to go into the gut. That means that is going to be inflammatory. So that's an inflammatory diet. So any ultra-processed food is inflammatory. So that's increasing tiredness. So junk food increases tiredness because all the energy is now being taken up by inflammation. So the body tries to say, I haven't got enough energy in my body to do that, so I'm going to take it away from the brain and tell the body to be quiet. So you get this tiredness. And omega-3 fiber healthy diet, that increases the mucus, so that helps to protect the gut microbiome, and that can also reduce. So when you're taking lots of sugar, or which is bad and inflammatory, or you're taking lots of ultra-processed food, you're going to feel tired. You really are, and there's a very good reason for it, because it's proven. And if we look at where we can perhaps make some important changes, obviously we've got breastfeeding and bottle feeding in the vaginal, but you've also got things like the detox, going around with bleach everywhere, eating ultra-processed food, taking too many antibiotics, living in an area where you've got no nature whatsoever, and living in an area where you've got air pollution coming through. All of these things have created and impacted our gut microbiome. And if we look at the microbiome of those little kind of orange dots on the left-hand side of that are all Americans living in the normal part of America. And those on the right-hand side are all the tribes of hunter-gatherers who are living in one in Central America, one in South America, and one in Africa, but they're all the same. That's how our gut biome should look. But you can see how the American diet and everything else is completely shifted, way more than you'd expect. And that's what we really have to try and do. We've got to bring our gut biome back again to where we were designed to be, where we're meant to be healthy. And it's all about diversity. Now, we'll talk about in a minute, and hopefully some questions. By the way, do put questions in, and I'm hopefully that you'll be able to kind of give me some as well at the end, if there will be some time. But diversity is the most important thing. It's not how many bacteria you've got, it's the variety of bacteria is the real key thing. So how do you do that? Well, let's go through some of the actions. First of all, raw vegetables. So raw vegetables.
Sorry, can I just interrupt? I'm not sure that the slides are moving on. We're still on the how can your diet reduce tiredness?
Oh, I don't know why that is. Let me I don't know why that is. So has that moved on there?
No.
To US population?
Nope.
Oh, sorry about that.
It's okay.
Are we going to stop that?
Do you want to try resharing?
Right, I've just stopped share. I've just gone out of presentation mode. Can you see raw vegetable salad?
Yes. So we're on. Yeah. How can your diet reduce tiredness?
I don't know why that's on. Was it working up to now?
Yep. It was when you went on to talk about Americans. You didn't get that slide, I don't think.
And you're not seeing any of that?
It's actually frozen now.
Okay, so I'm just going to quickly refresh. Hang on a second. Otherwise, I'll just talk and you won't need to see.
I think it's probably your internet, William, because your video's frozen as well.
Yeah, and it's giving me a very strong yeah, let me go onto my phone. Bear with me just 2 seconds. Think about everything I've said. Don't feel too depressed because we're going to tell you how it's all going to be improved.
I have the presentation on my PC, so I can share mine, and you can just tell me to change the slide if you want to.
That might be really helpful. But I think I'm just going to just try this one. But this might be, yeah. Why don't we do that, Jane? So I'll.
Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
William, you've frozen completely now. You should, if you're there, you should probably leave and rejoin. I'm just going to WhatsApp William to make sure, just in case he can't hear me.
Thank you. Good to have you as backup here this morning, Jane.
The wonders of Teams.
Yep.
I am back again.
Oh, hooray.
Okay,
Good stuff.
and I've got my camera back again. I don't know what's happened there. So thank you, Jane. So that's the US population on the left, and that's what the hunter-gatherers are on the right, but they're from Africa, North America, South America and Central America, and bizarrely, they're all fairly similar. That's where we should be. And this is, I'm going to show you how we do that. So Jane, if you can go on to the next slide there. It's diversity, and the next one. So start with your raw vegetables. What you won't probably realize is that you're kind of a bit worried because you wash your salad and you think, oh, am I washing off all the bacteria, all the good bacteria? Well, you're washing off the pesticides, so that's pretty good. So we definitely need to get that done. But what you're also finding is that the bugs, every lettuce leaf has hundreds and thousands of small bacteria inside the leaf. So you can't get rid of those by washing it. It's absolutely fine. So every time you take some raw vegetables, not only are you producing fiber, which is a food to your gut and biome, but it's also giving you actual bacteria that you need. So raw vegetables are probably the greatest way of improving your gut biome. The next one. And can you still hear me, Jane?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Good. So you've got vigorous activity. Now you think it's all about diet. It's not. It's actually about activity as well. So activity is an anti-inflammatory. It calms everything down. So that will help your gut become more secure. It also allows your bowel to be a little bit more active. And that means that you get it all through. So that's very, very important, that moderate and vigorous activity increase and improve your gut biome, irrespective of the diet you're taking. The next one is oil-rich fish. Now, it's not so much just the fact that that feeds the gut, the gut biome. It actually helps the environment. So the omega-3 and the oils increase the mucus around the gut wall, and therefore that protects the bacteria, gives them enough food to have, and also stops them from getting into that leaky gut. So when you're doing the oil-rich fish, you're not actually directly improving the bacteria. You're actually making their environment a much better place. Next one. And that's, sorry, I didn't know that was in there. So increasing the goblet cell function means that those healthy oils create more mucus coming through. And it also, the bile acids, which are released when you actually have a gut, this oil, the bile acids are actually selective antimicrobial. So they get rid of some of the nasty ones, and they act as a signaling molecule. So they actually also suppress the they make more regulatory, things like that.
You've gone on mute, William.
You appear to be on mute, William.
There we go. So I just had to go out because there are lots of children coming into this room. The cruciferous vegetables provide fiber, and they also provide lots and lots of bacteria inside those leaves as well. But they're crucial in feeding the gut biome, so that making sure you've got plenty of fiber. So if you don't have fiber, the bacteria then get hungry because that's what they're relying on, and you can't digest fiber. But what happens is the fiber is then, if that's not there, they start to eat the mucus because the bacteria are hungry. And if they eat the mucus, that mucus level goes thinner and thinner. We're probably very familiar with this. This is all about foods which have got fermenting. The yogurts, they've got bacteria in them by loads. But it's not just that. It's actually the fact that the fermentation helps to digest some of the foods which helps the bacteria to digest, to get some really strong, important things like the short chain fatty acids that we need to improve the gut biome. So out of all the things we'll be taking, I'd say the raw vegetables so far have been very helpful, but trying to get some fermentation in here is actually really important. And you can see here the kimchi, sauerkraut, the probiotic yogurts. Are these better than the probiotics you buy in Boots or in the counter? Absolutely, they are way, way better. So when you take a probiotic from Boots, I'm not saying it's harmful, and it's actually quite good, but what it actually is one or two bacteria. It's not that diversity. Whereas when you take these, there's a huge variety and diversity of bacteria, which is why they're so effective. The fruits come with fiber. Now, people say, well, fruit juice, can I just not have a smoothie and blend it? Yes, you can, but when you blend it, you get rid of the fiber, you break down that fiber, and you absorb the sugar more quickly, the fructose, which causes more inflammation in the gut, which therefore causes more damage to the gut microbiome. And it produces insulin, which means your blood sugar drops quite quickly. And it's that up and down of the blood sugar that causes problems leading to diabetes. So fruit juices or smoothies look really good, and in small amounts, they're fine. But what you're really trying to do is the whole fruit, because you need that fiber. You need to have the structure of the fiber that doesn't get broken down. So fruits are great. Sugar is limited, but it's not so bad. And then the processed foods, I mentioned about emulsifiers. Emulsifiers are just awful for your gut. Look on the ingredients, see what emulsifiers there are there, because you really don't need those. Also, you've got high sugar, and you've got refined carbohydrates, and those refined carbohydrates mean that you get a lot of the kind of sugar going into the bowel, but it keeps going through the small intestine, and because there's so much of it, it doesn't all get absorbed. It goes into the large intestine, and that's where your gut microbiome is. They're not used to sugar. They think it's great, but what it does, it starts to grow bacteria you don't want, like yeast and candida and more nasty bugs. So the more sugar you have, the more it goes right through to where the gut microbes are, and they are not used to it, and they start to go a bit crazy. But unfortunately, the crazy ones are the bad ones. They get really big. And some of you may have known about having candida or thrush in your bowel. Most doctors don't talk about it. A lot of alternative health practitioners do. I think we're realizing that they've probably been right all along. And then being outdoors, that girl with the kind of muddy hands, picking up leaves, stroking animals, pets, being connected to the soil, being connected to the trees, all of that adds more and more of those old friends, those bugs in there. And that time in nature is really important. And you just do that as much as possible, at least 10 or 15 minutes a day. And that's why gardening is so good. Okay, you might be using your gloves, but you're probably wiping your face and you're probably getting bugs around. And then finally, you've got a pet bacteria. So you're feeding them, you're giving them a nice environment, a nice warm environment with their mucus. Make sure that's all okay. You're giving them lots of friends to work with, diversity, but you've got to give them some time off. And that's really what fasting does. Now, whether you do that by fasting just during the night, you stop eating at 8 o'clock in the evening and you try and go through to 7 o'clock, which should be absolutely fine. That would be 11 hours. Or you might want to eat a bit late, but then miss breakfast and then have something at about 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock in the morning. It doesn't really matter. Some people can do 8 hours, 9 hours, and then they start to feel faint. Other people can do 16 or 17 hours and feel absolutely fine. We're all individual. Don't let someone prescribe to you how much fasting you should be doing. All the evidence is all over the place, but you do need some fasting. You do need a break. And particularly for alcohol as well, you need that break at least twice a week. So look at your gut like an ecosystem, like a kind of forest. And the number that's come up is that you need to have at least 30 plants a week. Now, you can think about that and you might think, oh my God, I'm never going to do that. You know, what can I have? I have my broccoli, I have my courgettes, I have my salad leaf or something. But when you add all the nuts and all the herbs and all the fruit and all the vegetables, you can actually get to that 30. And if there's one thing I really, really would like to get from here is that you need to have 30 plants a week. Work it out, going down different aisles or different shelves in the supermarket, perhaps changing. But that is the most important thing. And the benefits you're going to get from that, not only you get more energy, you get reduced inflammation, you get more concentration, but you're going to prevent yourself from getting so many problems later. And for children, this is really important. I'm not saying I should stop all fast food, but absolutely reducing it will be a real help. So 30 plants a week, that's the message to take home. And think when you're looking at the fruit and fiber and all the other things, of nuts, etc., try and get as whole as possible. But of course, they can be in ingredients. But when you're looking at the ingredients, the one we do on ultra-processed food is that if there's more than 5 ingredients, you're probably starting to get processed food. Now, it's not very, completely accurate, but it's a good indicator. And when you start to see things you've never heard of on those ingredients, you're going into ultra-processed food territory. And almost certainly you'll see emulsifiers in there and sugar. So the gut microbiome is vital. It actually helps from treating depression and anxiety. There are even psychiatrists now who are using food as medication for depression, anxiety, and other psychiatric conditions. The high diversity of plant, that 30 is important. Yes, you've got the fruit and vegetables. Remember that the bugs are inside them. Now, if you cook a vegetable, what happens? Well, you will kill quite a lot of the bacteria off. But actually, even the dead bacteria have got an immune response to our body, and they help it, and they can take away the inflammation. So don't feel you've got to have everything raw. You can cook vegetables, but that bacteria wall and the remains of it has got enough of a protein to stimulate your own immune system. So they do have a huge amount of benefit, even when they've been cooked as well. But raw or minimal will keep them alive and therefore be probably a little bit better. There we go. So that is as much as I wanted to say. I do apologize for that little hiccup in the middle. I'm not sure what happened to the internet there. But let me know if there are any questions at all that anybody wants to ask about this.
Thank you, William. Has anybody got any questions, or shall I start going through the chat? Okay. Oh, go on, Sarah.
Sorry, I was on mute. Absolutely fascinating. So thank you very much for that talk. I try most of the time, or about 80 to 90% of the time, to eat whole food, plant-based, which is obviously minimal processed food, but still like a treat now and then. So When you do that, are you sort of undoing the good that you've done by eating well, say for 80% of the time, and then 20% of the time you're undoing that good, basically, is my main question. And also, I'm interested in how this works with people, say, for instance, like celiacs and things like that, where they've got limited diets.
Yeah, it's a really good question there. If you've got a limited diet, you just have to be a bit more careful about it, and you obviously have to kind of probably get some advice. And I'm not a nutritionist, and let me quickly hasten to add that. So I'm a doctor, a GP, but I'm not a nutritionist. And I think there's some conditions like celiac where, and also if you're a vegan as well, or a strict vegan, then you do need some advice on that, because I think for your gut biome, you're going to be fine, but you are going to reduce some of the minerals. Don't forget, things like iron are absorbed much more difficult. It's much more difficult to absorb iron through vegetables and eating spinach and things than it is with animal. Taking vitamin C will help, but it's those kind of nuances that you really do need to know about, and that's where nutritionists would help. Are you undoing the good? Yes and no, it does depend. So if you're eating a really good plant-based diet, and then you suddenly have a bit of a binge, and I think you were saying basically you do, you start to eat some rubbish, or you just start to going a bit crazy. To be honest, no, a one-off is not going to make it undo all that damage, all that. The gut biome is pretty resilient. In fact, it's so resilient in many ways, from your lifestyle, but it is all of those things I'm saying. You have to persist on having emulsifiers and high sugar diet and not have fresh vegetables. You have to persist for several months before you start to see your gut biome disappear. So a 1 or 2 days of going off the rails with your diet is not going to cause any harm at all. And actually, once you're older, you've got your gut biome it does move a bit, otherwise I wouldn't be talking about this, but it is quite limited to how it changes, which is a good thing. It means you can't undo it, but obviously it does mean that you do need to keep persisting on this, and it will slowly improve.
Lovely, thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Katie, do you want to go next?
Yeah, thank you, William. That was really, really interesting. My question is, are emulsifiers often disguised as anything else? Like, could they be named differently on maybe processed foods that we can look out for?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and the answer is yes, they can. Again, I'm not an expert on all of that. By law, they're not allowed to just put the E numbers anymore. They actually have to put down some of those they have to put the letters, and it's actually in fact, and it's also by choice. So if you see an E number on its own, which I'm not sure if you can still do that, but you will be suspicious that that's probably an emulsifier hidden behind that E number. They come out, lecithin and some of the emulsifiers aren't that bad. The problem is there's good emulsifiers and bad emulsifiers. So the best way of understanding it is that food really cheap? And does it look natural? And it is in a way, a gut feeling that that is pretty cheap food, like a pizza that costs £1. That will be full of emulsifiers. It has to be, because it has to have a long shelf life. So anything with a long shelf life and is cheap will almost certainly have emulsifiers. So that's probably the best way of looking at bread, which can last up to 5, 6, 7 days. It's probably got emulsifiers in it, because any normal bread goes off after about 2 days, and it won't do it. So you're right, it's difficult to actually work it out, but often you can sense where the problems are.
Thank you. Thanks, Katie. Elisabetta, do you want to go next?
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but it's a bit distorted. Do you want to? Do you want to put your question into the chat and I can read it out? Thank you. There's another question in the chat, William. Would a fecal transplant be better than a course of Wegovy? Would it be cheaper in the long run?
That's a really good point. I don't know the answer. The fecal transplant is new. It's being developed. I would say you absolutely would need to go to some experts who've been using it a lot more. I'd say it's still experimental, so I think you have to be a little bit careful with it. Well, no, not be careful, because it doesn't do any harm at all. It can't do any harm. But whether it's going to be doing the good with other compared to others, I'd say it's a bit. I'd say it's early days at the moment. I think the biggest problem with it is actually the fact that most people find it quite repulsive, and that actually the patients just choose not to because they feel it's not great. But actually, when you think about it, it's not going anywhere near the upper part of your body. It's all coming from within. But it does work, and it works incredibly well. So I would say that, yeah, I would say that at the moment, I'd be cautious to compare it with anything else.
Thanks. Okay, Elisabetta said, what about worms?
Worms? As a treatment or as a bad thing? So there is a point, there is some thought that hookworm and other worms are really good for regulating your immune system. So I think if that's where you're heading, yes, you're right. But the downside of hookworm is it can cause anemia and other problems, and therefore balance of probabilities, it's best not to use that. But if that's where you're heading, you're absolutely right that it's the hookworms and the small worms we used to have as we were evolving have actually really helped to regulate the immune system. And actually in countries where you get endemic worms, the immune systems are really, really good, and actually your inflammation is low. But I don't think there'll be any doctor anywhere in this country who's going to say, I'm going to give you some hookworms or any other worms on that.
Thank you. Just having a quick click through the chat. Is there any correlation with junk foods and narcolepsy?
I don't know specifically, but junk foods make you tired without any doubt, because they create that inflammation. That inflammation needs energy. That energy has to come from somewhere, and the body's always got its kind of areas. Bizarrely, if you really want to know where the other energy comes from, it's turning hair grey. So that's going to put people off. Keeping your hair pigmented takes up a lot of energy. So the body looks around and thinks, what things can I sacrifice? The frontal part of the brain is one of them. So concentration goes down. But the other part of it is actually making your hair go grey, because that then saves a lot of energy. The brain is always looking around for places where it can save energy. And unfortunately, they're the two obvious ones, but there are all sorts of other ones, including tiredness. Tiredness is a way of slowing everything down. So it's a positive thing. It's a survival thing. But of course, that's not what you want. So junk food, I'm not sure about narcolepsy, but definitely tiredness. And whether it actually does cause the hair to go grey, we know that inflammation can do, but we're not sure whether junk food does. If I say it does, perhaps that will stop people eating it.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions from anybody? Feel free to pop your hands up. How long would it take to see the benefits if you change your diet or your lifestyle?
The inflammation changes almost overnight. It's really quick. So if you stop sugar, if you cut right back on sugar, you'll notice improvement within a day or two. And likewise, if you start to eat a better, more wholesome diet, you'll find that you'll get energy back again within a week or so. So really quick. The actual microbes, the gut biome, that takes longer. That would take several weeks or even months to slowly change.
Yeah, thank you. For very fussy children who refuse to eat fruits and veg, is giving them a vitamin supplement better than nothing at all?
Yeah, it is. And actually, I don't want to kind of knock anything. If you take multivitamins, evidence does show it does make a difference. It does help. So it's not the answer and probiotics, absolutely. If you're taking antibiotics, take your probiotics as well, but try and do it with food rather than tablets, because that's got so much more. But yes, a really fussy child is a nightmare to try and deal with. But by all means, just take the vitamins, be fine. Try and get them into some kind of fresh. If you can't do it, get yogurts or something which have got probiotics in them and use that. But you're trying to get that gut biome as diverse as possible, as young as possible, because that's what will stay with them for the rest of their life.
Great, thank you. Is kefir really necessary if you have a healthy, balanced diet?
So kefir is, that's the yogurt one, isn't it? Yeah, it's just another addition of bacteria. So you can use anything, but that you don't have to have it. But if you enjoy it and like it, it's going to help. But the vegetables and the fresh and the nuts and the fiber and the variety, they're all, plenty there. So you don't have to have a kefir, but it's just if you like it, it's going to add another bit of diversity. And it's all about diversity. So you just have to have a little bit of this, a bit of that, a bit of the other, as opposed to getting in too much of a routine.
Okay. We've got a question about honey versus sugar. What about using honey as a replacement for sugar? Would that need to be cut out too if going sugar-free?
Yeah, there's a big debate about it, and there's even a debate about the honey coming from within your area being of extra benefit. And there is some thought, it's not been proven, but food processors that are being grown in your area, because it's your area your immune system is knows about, actually may be better than food that's being brought in from Costa Rica or somewhere else like that. So, and honey is exactly the same. And there's thought about local honey actually helps your immune system a bit more. It's got antimicrobials in it. It is better than sugar. So plain processed sugar is probably the worst you can get. And fructose used in industry is not great. The sugar you get from fruit and from honey, much, much better. Fruit's the best because it's got the fiber and therefore it stops the sugar from absorbing so quickly. But when it's smoothied, you lose that benefit. So honey, I'd say sits there at definitely a better end. And I would, if you wanted to have some sweetness, absolutely. To be honest, I every now and then when I feel. Oh.
You're still there.
William, your mic's cut out.
Okay, we are heading to the end of our session anyway, so unless William comes back on in the next few minutes, I'd suggest that we cut it there. Really loads to think about in terms of that presentation. And Tasha, I'm right, aren't I, in saying that there's a whole section of different webinars that we are offering in 2026 that are aligned to this?
Yeah, not fully confirmed as of yet because we're still waiting on confirmation of budgets and things, but we are looking to run a whole plethora of health and wellbeing sessions again, and also welcomed those that are doing good stuff within their organisations to showcase them to everyone so we can show best practice and not reinvent the wheel for everyone so everyone can have the same experience and make their organisations and their colleagues a better working environment.
Fab, thank you. Okay, so Jane, would you mind taking our thanks back to William? So thank you again for a really, really good presentation. Thank you to all of our speakers from this morning and to all of you for giving up the time to come and listen to them. Huge thanks to the health and wellbeing champions that are in your organisations, because as I say, they're the ones that are bringing the ideas through to One NHS Finance about how we do these sessions and what's included in the conference. So thank you to everybody who gives up their time to that. I'm going to leave you now, so you've got hopefully some good things to take away, and I hope you enjoyed it. Again, if you've got any feedback, do let us know. Tasha will be sending out feedback forms via email pretty much straight after this, and once they're completed and returned, you'll get access to your CPD certificate to download. And yeah, have a really good rest of your day. Nice to see you, and thanks very much. John, did you want to say something?